Good evening. It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, September 17th, 2004, and I am calling to order the Placerville Planning Commission regular meeting. Would you all please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Ms. Hunter, will you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Carter.
Here.
Commissioner Friend.
Here.
Chair Keeney.
Here.
Commissioner Lepper. Here. Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Okay. Full house tonight, and I want to thank all the members of the public joining us. Welcome. Item number 3 is closed session report, which we have none. And then item 4 is the adoption of our agenda. And under item 4, I've had a couple of comments from staff that perhaps we consider reordering the items on our agenda. First, number 9, move that, would you consider moving that to after the environmental assessments under 10? Within the environmental assessments, we apparently have quite a few members of the audience here for item 10.3, so if you would care to, we could reorder the items so that we do what is listed as 10.3 first, and then continue with 10.1 and 10.2 as described. And so with that proposed changes, I would entertain a motion to for the agenda.
Madam Chair, so I want to make sure that I'm clear. We're going to take item 9.1, the Sealand Shipping Containers presentation, move that after all of the items under environmental assessments.
Correct.
And then we're going to take item 10.3 as the first item. So our agenda will then read technically
General plan amendment.
The general plan amendment.
Site plan review.
And the site plan, well, this, we're going to do site plan review
And then
before
the
10.2?
10-2.
Okay, so we'll do
Madam-
10, okay.
Madam
And
Chair,
then
if I may,
10-2 has been postponed.
Madam Chair, if I may interrupt, and I apologize. There are a number of persons wishing to speak on item 10.3 that are expected to be here around 6:15. So maybe we go ahead and we keep 10.3 in its correct order, but do move the Sealand container following the items under 10.
So it's staff's recommendation that we only reorder the agenda to move the presentations to after all of the environmental assessments.
Yes.
So proceed with 10.1, 0.2, and 0.3 as ordered on
As
our
ordered,
agenda.
yes. Thank you.
All right. Staff has intel that I don't.
Intel.
Motion to adopt as amended.
As amended. All right, we have a motion from Mr. Friend.
I'll second with the question, do we need to remove item 10.2, or we're just going to move on from that? It's not happening today?
No, that is on your agenda, and we will address it.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, thank you.
We should have done that after a second, then ask for the clarification.
I will go ahead and second it.
So we have a motion from Mr. Friend and a second from Ms. Lepper. Any other comments? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. So we have a slightly amended agenda. Next is consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by general consent. Under our consent calendar is approval of the minutes from our regular Planning Commission meeting of September 3rd. Are there, let's see, would
Motion to adopt.
I'm sorry, anyone on the commission, staff, or audience wish to remove an item for discussion?
I would like to pull the minutes, please.
Okay, Commissioner Carter's requested to pull the minutes. So we'll move on then to number 6, which is then consideration of that item. So, Mr. Carter, go ahead with your concern about the minutes.
Yeah, just a quick change. Under item number 4, the vote on that was 5-0. Commissioner Smith did not abstain from the adoption of the agenda, so that should reflect 5-0, no
Commissioner
abstention.
Smith did not
Yeah.
speak during the meeting, and so therefore staff wrote it down as an abstention.
I just watched the video. He clearly said aye on the vote. Okay, but yeah, if I,
For the agenda?
yeah, he walked in as the vote was happening, and he said aye on the agenda.
Was he on microphone?
I heard him.
Okay, well, if you heard him.
But
I
he
didn't remember,
wasn't-
so I checked.
He
That's
wasn't
what
yet
we-
up at the dais, right?
It's not material. I just wanted to reflect it
Yeah,
properly.
staff
so-
watched the video several times.
Okay.
So,
And so he was in the room, but yet hadn't got to his chair. And because I remember that you came in slightly after.
He was present. It was just like the last motion. There was no verbiage.
He was flying in, if I remember correctly.
And I withdraw my change then, and let the minutes stand as they are.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I had the same concern about that, the wording.
Yeah.
How do the rest of you? Any other?
Move to adopt?
Okay.
I
So
will second.
we have a motion from Mr. Friend and second from Mr. Carter. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I think you need to say aye.
5-0 to approve the minutes from our previous meeting. Number 8 is written communications on non-agenda items. We had several communications waiting for us, but as far as I could tell, everything was related to the agenda. Is that correct?
That's correct. They're all associated with 10.3.
Okay, so no written communications on non-agenda items. All right. Very good. Now let's move to item 10, environmental assessments, public hearings. 10.1 is a site plan review, 99-02-R for Starbucks Coffee, sign plan and site plan amendment. And I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Hunter, for the staff report.
Thank you. So Planning Commission approval is required for applications of new signage for those wishing to deviate from the standards outlined in the city's sign regulations or for amendments to previously approved master sign plans. The existing master sign plan for Starbucks Coffee was approved in April 1999 under SPR 99-02 and CUP 99-02 when Long John Silver's restaurant closed and Starbucks opened and the drive-through was added. The sign plan included a wall sign, canopy logo, pole sign, pre-menu board sign, menu board sign, and various directional signs. The subject request includes the removal and relocation of the existing pre-sale menu sign approximately 7 feet to the northeast of its current position, the repainting of the existing menu board, and the removal of the existing ordering speaker and installation of a new 9.8-foot tall digital ordering system, or DOS, with a 5.8-foot canopy. Table 1 on page 4 of the staff report provides information on the master sign plan approved in 1999 versus the proposed amendment. The request includes minimal changes to the sign plan with a net increase of sign area by approximately 11 square feet due to the new DOS. The design of the DOS is consistent with that of existing on-site signage and is similar to the speaker utilized by the McDonald's restaurant located approximately 270 feet west of the proposed project. Additionally, the relocation of the pre-menu board towards the entrance to the drive-through will make it more visible to customers. It should be noted that the city's sign general regulations indicate that aggregate square footage for all signs on a property is 2 square feet per 1 lineal foot of business frontage, unless otherwise approved pursuant to the master sign plan regulations. The previous approval under SPR 99-02 allowed for 143 square feet of signage, and the proposed amendment would result in 154 square feet. It is the opinion of staff that the project will not result in a change in the overall style of signage on the site, keeping with the spirit of the previously approved plan. Further, the proposed sign modifications are of professional quality, are compatible with the style and character of existing improvements, are well related to the existing signage on the site, and shall provide adequate signage for Starbucks. The modifications are consistent with existing improvements on the site and add overall design quality. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the staff report as part of the public record, make the findings in support of the SPR request, and conditionally approve SPR 99-02-R based on the project information and findings included in the staff report and subject to the recommended conditions of approval included in Attachment 1. This concludes staff's report.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions about the staff report. On page 4, it's stated that there no change to the square footage of the existing pre-menu board. Okay, but there is going to be a slight increase in the area of signage by 11 square feet.
That is correct.
Okay.
Because of the new digital ordering system.
Okay, and I think there's a minor typo on page 2 regarding the dates of the previous site plan reviews. SPR 78-11-R, was that in September 3rd of 2023? And then the following one, 78-11-R2, December 5th, 2024?
Yes, those dates should be swapped.
Okay,
I
that's
apologize, yes.
just a very minor typo. My last question for you is, I noticed in Figure 2, and I was looking at the diagrams, other diagrams too, I see the new location of the pre-sale menu board. Where is the current pre-sale menu board? Is it nearby? Is it,
If you look at Table 1 on page 4, the next table, the pre-menu board sign, I have a graphic in there showing it. It's very close to the bollard by the ordering speaker.
okay. Okay, I think it's just the wording that threw me off. All right, those are the only questions I had. Does anyone else have a question for staff on the report?
No, just to note that I don't think it's December 5th, 2024, because that's not happened yet. But that I think they're both 2023. I had that circled too, and I didn't have a chance to go back and check it.
What?
But I think they're both 2023.
2023, okay.
Staff
just
will
want
have
Christmas
to
to-
look back, apologies.
So they're both in 2023? Or is it 2020?
Potentially, yes, I
and
apologize.
okay.
I'll have to look.
That's okay, yeah.
We'll leave you
Just as part of the
to, yeah, I guess to update your staff report so that it reflects those. Just a minor thing.
Yeah, staff will be happy to make those corrections, but it has no material value to the decision before.
Right. Anyone else have a question? Go ahead.
What would be their allowable number per ordinance with their frontage? I apologize for putting you on the
I
spot.
believe it's 70 square feet. I did check before. They
70,
have a
okay.
frontage of 35.
So they were already double that on the last site plan, okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hunter, for bearing with us with those questions and minor corrections. And let's see, is the project proponent in the audience tonight? Okay, we don't, good evening. Is there anything since you come down here, welcome. If you would, please step up and give us your name to the podium. To the podium?
Yeah, my name is Aaron Gilliland. I'm with Alpha Architectural Signs. My permit person is ill, so I'm here to answer any specific questions you might have. This is basically maintenance and an upgrade to the systems for hopefully the better service and a little quicker response in the drive-through area.
Okay, thank you. And first off, I want to thank you for coming down here, taking the time to come to the meeting, and also for an excellent, very clear application package for us to review. Does anyone have a question for him, for the project proponent? No? Okay, please have a seat.
Thank you.
Would anyone in the audience care to address the Planning Commission about this site plan review? Please come to the microphone if you would tell us your name.
Good evening, Michael Drobish, Placerville. So I don't have a problem with the sign look. It is a modern shopping center. It's not in our historic districts. My only problem is when vehicles back up onto Broadway because of the popularity. So the question I have first is, there's basically 3 driveways. There's the one that feeds Taco Bell and Starbucks. There's one to the east and one to the west. So I don't want to impact local roadway traffic. That would be a CEQA problem. I don't know if that current drive entry is going away with the Broadway rebuild, or if the raised area, no left raised area, is going back in afterwards. But I think you either double queue the drive-through like Chick-fil-A does, and that might help eliminate some of the backup onto Broadway. That would mean an extra drive-through sign, and they're already over signage, but if it keeps the motoring, public safe from a rear end out there on the road. That grassy area looks like underutilized land. I don't see how you couldn't do a double queue and get 3 or maybe 4 more cars, because they do a 2-to-1 feed, I believe. Something to consider. And yeah, that's my only consideration, is stop the cars from backing out onto Broadway. And either eliminate that driveway, do a double queue, or you force the east and west driveways. One, Taco Bell enter here, Starbucks enter here by the main signage for the shopping center. And the impacts are on the lot, not on the public roadway. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drowish. Would anyone else from the public, from the audience, care to comment on this particular site plan review? Okay. That's yeah, that is a problem, and it's unfortunately out of the scope of our site plan review tonight, but I'm sure staff has heard the comment. I would like to bring you back up to the podium. I don't know if the increased or the change in signage, does Starbucks feel like this will increase efficiency as far as filling orders? Do you see any way that the digital ordering system is going to be more efficient, might help alleviate this congestion that Mr. Drobish described?
Right. I'm not sure about the concern he has, but yeah, the digital order board is quicker. The idea of moving the pre-menu board up that 7 feet is so that people can register what they want before they get to the menu board, and having a little bit closer allows them to see it sooner. That was the intent.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for addressing that concern. Seeing no further public comment, I'll close that portion of this site plan review hearing and bring it back to the Commission for consideration and possible action. Yeah, I think this is, a very straightforward project, improve signage and maybe more efficient processing of the customers.
Just a question for staff. Both the chair acknowledged that consideration of the issue that has been brought up is probably outside of our scope for this evening. However, just to staff, if we find that this is in fact a problem, or whatever degree the problem rises to concern, what are the options for the city in this case? If we realize that due to the popularity, okay, too much of a good thing, I guess, it's creating a real traffic problem on Broadway, how do we resolve that?
Well, first, staff is going to bring that up with our police department and upper management, and we're going to have to determine whether or not that is a situation that is ongoing. I know it was a problem during COVID when everything was drive-through and nobody was going in any buildings. I remember that was a real problem there and other locations as well. But it's something I've made a note. We'll have to investigate and see if it is a problem, and then if it is a problem, we'll have to work with Starbucks on how to resolve it. If they're backing up in the Broadway, that is a safety hazard.
All right, thank you. Otherwise, I concur with the chair's assessment that this is straightforward and an improvement, so thank you.
Any other comments? Yes.
I just have a quick comment if you're one.
Go ahead.
I just wanted, this is an extraordinary amount of signs. It's triple the allowable number and over double the allowable square footage. So I understand the purpose of all these signs, and I agree with them, but it is an extraordinary amount of signage for a building with a very small footprint. So I just do want to make that comment that we are making a building with extraordinary signage even more extraordinary. But I do see the point of every one of those signs, so.
Helps
I
with
guess I
directions
wanted
and,
to add this, because those are similar to observations I've made before. We have 30-foot tall pole sign, and it was established at a time that was much different. I've been exposed to the issue for about 12 to 15 years when I heard council members like Patty Borelli say that the need for signs now is not what it used to be. Every one of us has one of these. And I asked my phone, nearest Starbucks, 2 words, and in 2 seconds it gives me addresses. I push a second button, and I don't have to look at it for the rest of the evening. In 3 minutes, it'll tell me where to go. And I do that all the time. I'm in Roseville. I got to find a Federal Express office. 2 minutes later, I find it. That's the way it is for most of our concerns. So the difficulty is we've already done this. We've already allowed them to have a pole sign. Now what we're doing is we're adding more signs and more footage. But what it does do overall is it has this visual clutter that it's not needed. So when you see the Starbucks sign above the building, the canopy sign as it's described, or wall sign, that does it for me. If I'm in the area, I know where to go, but I don't need the pole sign. So it's a policy matter. I think we should be working towards fewer signs. And if we were in a position, we could trade and say, get rid of your pole sign and add these extra, because these extra signs have some sense to them. They're needed to facilitate people already there which channel to drive into. But you don't need the 30-foot tall pole sign, because when you're going by, you already know where you're supposed to be. So I don't know how to address that, but that is a concern similar to what we heard from Commissioner Carter.
thank you, good points. Amy, anything
I-
to add? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, did you have a?
I'll yield my time to the lady from the north.
Well, I just say that I had a similar thought. I do like that they're moving the pre-menu sign a little earlier, because I think right now it takes you a while to get to where you're actually seeing anything, which can inhibit how long it takes to serve. If there was something that we could look at, I think we could look at maybe reducing the pre-menu board for just the menu board in the ordering system. But honestly, I didn't really have too much of an issue with it, because I think it's kind of protected in there once you get in there. They don't really yell out at the public who's not involved with Starbucks being in the drive-thru at the time. So I had a similar thought about crowding and the number of signs and things, but I think ultimately adding the digital ordering canopy is not going to be obtrusive or really glaring, I guess. So I don't think it will be too big of a deal. I'm totally sensitive to the number, but I think they all serve their purpose. And if there's not any huge push to get rid of one, then I'm pretty happy with the application.
Thank you.
As the old man, I'd like to kind of weigh in on this. And you're right, Commissioner Smith, there is a lot of convenience with things, but at the same time, the scenario that you describe, and I know my own experience, is all of a sudden I'm looking down at my phone, even though I'm not holding it, I get one touch, and I'm not looking at the road, and that, I think, is a distraction. That's point one. Point two, this isn't a highway commercial, right? And so visibility from the highway, I think, because technically people traveling east can get off at Schnell, and people heading west can see the sign and maybe get off at Mosquito Broadway. And in reading the staff report, and perhaps I missed it, the only change in the square footage is only 11 square feet, right? Which, to me, I really thought was well, the way you described it, Commissioner Carter. I thought, oh my gosh, I missed something really bad here. But I don't find that to be egregious at all. And I do think that the menu board and the relocation of the menu board up front should be more expeditionary, efficient, and will expedite ordering, et cetera. And so I'm comfortable with that. I'm not disagreeing in principle with what's been said, but I think we have to look at each thing individually. And I mean, I just, I'll tell you what I don't like, and I go to the places, the Bay Area is notorious, and I'm looking for something, and even the monument signs are almost minuscule, and they're really hard to find businesses. And then, you're distracted, you're trying to find something, and I don't think that's safe and frustrating for me. Again, I'm the old guy, so that's just how I look at things. I would vote to approve the project as presented. Thank you.
And just one quick last point, and the only reason I brought that up is just, consistency. At our last meeting, we had a business that was here that we were going to have them remove a sign because they had too many. And now, I just want to make sure that we're consistent and that, the equal application of our ordinances happens. And so that's why I brought it up, just to make sure that, there are businesses that have felt like their signage has been limited. And so I just wanted to daylight that.
Oh, very good. And, there's, we have to, of course, be consistent, but each site has its own constraints, and sometimes, it's, we have to, that's our job, is to determine what's appropriate for the site.
I'd be open to making a motion.
Please, go
Okay.
ahead.
Great. So I would like to make a motion that we adopt the staff report as part of the public record, that we make the following findings in support of site plan review 99-02-R as listed in numbers 1 through 5 on page 6 of the staff report, and that we conditionally approve SPR 99-02-R located at 1228 Broadway based on the project information and findings included in the staff report and subject to the recommended conditions of approval included in attachment 1 of the staff report dated September 17th, 2024.
Thank you, Ms. Leff. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr.
Discussion?
Further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge Commissioner Carter's comment about consistency, and I think that point is very, very well taken. I think, and to Commissioner Lepper as the maker of the motion, perhaps we should add something, a finding or something that suggests that we found that the anticipated efficiency of the design warrants an allowance for an increase in the square footage. There's some kind of nexus that justifies, what we're doing, the reasons why, if that makes sense. And I think while it might be buried in the staff report per se, I think pulling it out, we did this last time, I think, pulling something out specifically so that when people come back and look at it in the minutes or whatever, then it's clear as to why we did it. So perhaps we could just have just a little bit of language along those lines, because I think Commissioner Carter is absolutely correct.
I agree, concur.
Do you have any suggestions?
I would think just something similar to what I just said, and that is that the anticipated throughput efficiency of the project as presented warrants, in this commission's opinion, an allowance for a slight increase in sign square footage.
Commissioner Friend, may I just suggest that one of the concerns we heard earlier was the potential backup onto Broadway of cars in that stall. So one of the potential efficiencies is that signage that would facilitate.
May reduce that backup.
Exactly. So that's.
Yeah, so we can add that, and that the efficiency, which may reduce, previous issues with traffic backup on the Broadway. Again, I like having the justification to go outside, and again, Commissioner Carter is correct on that.
We could, I think we could add that, append that to the finding number 3, where the proposed sign modifications is already described. The last sentence reads, the modifications are consistent with existing improvements on the site and add to the overall design quality. Would you be comfortable just adding the sentence, the anticipated improved service efficiency warrants the slight increase in the square footage?
Yes.
Okay.
For me, that would be acceptable if the maker of the motion would accept that.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, good.
All right.
Well written.
So we have a slightly modified and then a second for that. Okay, any further comments? Proposed changes? All right. Ms. Hunter, would you please call the vote?
Vice Chair Carter,
Aye.
Commissioner Friend,
Aye.
Chair Keeney,
Aye.
Commissioner Lepper,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
All right, thank you. 5-0, approval for that. So the sign changes, or site plan review is approved. There is a 10-day appeal period, as you probably are well aware. But other than that, thank you very much for coming down, and we wish you good luck with your project. Now, moving on with our slightly modified agenda, we'll move to item 10.2, Government Code Section 65402, General Plan Consistency, finding, review for transfer of property identified as APN 325-240-011 to be transferred from the County of El Dorado to the State of California for the Clementine Apartments. And this is your report, Mr. Rivas, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. This is a request by the County of El Dorado to consider a finding of general plan consistency in accordance with
Excuse me,
California.
could you move the microphone a little closer? I'm having a hard time hearing you. I apologize.
Sure. This is a request by the County of El Dorado to consider a finding of general plan consistency in accordance with California Government Code for a gift of surplus property that is currently under the ownership of the County of El Dorado to the State of California. The subject property is .45 acres in size. It's located at the southeast corner of Armory Drive and Ray Lawyer Drive and is considered surplus by the county. The land is adjacent to 212 Armory Drive, which is a 2.5-acre state-owned property that is currently proposed for the redevelopment as an 83-unit affordable apartment project known as the Clementine. The parcel can be characterized as a linear strip that runs along Ray Lawyer Drive and is basically unusable. However, this property would serve the proposed Clementine apartment complex by allowing for additional parking and to provide for a secondary access to the apartment, which would improve emergency access. This parcel would be transferred to the Department of General Services, that's the State Department of General Services, and DGS would be responsible for the long-term ground lease of the site. Jamboree would be the responsible for the construction and the management of the property over the life of the long-term ground lease, once it's transferred and becomes part of the Clementine. The Planning Commission is required to render its report as to the conformity with the general plan within 40 days after the matter is submitted to it. This staff report and the Planning Commission minute order would serve as that report if so approved by the Planning Commission. Formal notice from El Dorado County about the land transfer was given to the city on August the 27th, and 40 days would land on October the 6th. We did receive a request for a continuance that was received yesterday, September 16th, from the county due to the inability of the developer, a representative from Jamboree Housing Corporation, to attend. This is an agendized item, so staff is recommending that the commission then open the public hearing, take public comment, if any, and then close the public comment period. The commission can then discuss a proposed action if necessary, and you then have the option to continue this item to a date certain, that being your regular meeting on October the 1st, should you feel that the information provided is not sufficient for you to make the recommended actions of consistency with the general plan. Just one housekeeping item I want to add. Staff will add the reference of a file number to this item, and that is General Plan Consistency Review, or GPC 24-01. So we neglected to put that on there on the staff report, but that's just record keeping. Staff will add the file reference accordingly, such as in the minutes, planning logs, etc. So with that, staff is recommending the Planning Commission take the following actions. 1, adopt the staff report as part of the public record. 2, make the following findings in support of the finding that the transfer of the subject property identified as APN 325-240-011, from the County of El Dorado to the State of California, is consistent with the City of Placerville's general plan. One, no further environmental review is necessary for the project, as the subject property was included in the final initial study, mitigated negative declaration and mitigation reporting plan that was prepared for 212 Armory Drive project, Placerville, California. That was dated June 28th of 2022. We have a state clearinghouse number for that as well, so that document is available. It's over 100 pages, so we didn't include it. Prepared pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. The project site consists of 0.48 acres, is located within the unincorporated portions it's within the incorporated portions of the city, but is determined to be surplus property under the ownership of the County of El Dorado. The County of El Dorado requested a general plan consistency review by the City of Placerville Planning Commission for the proposed gifting of the subject property to the State of California. State law, Government Code, Section 65402A, requires that the city planning agency, which is this body, review property disposals and acquisitions for conformance with the adopted general plan. 5, the Planning Commission has determined the proposed gifting and transfer of this property from the County of El Dorado to the State of California for incorporation into the Clementine Affordable Housing Project is in conformance with the goals and policies of the City of Placerville General Plan. And then 6, the staff report to the Planning Commission in minute order of the Planning Commission's decision will serve as a report on a finding of consistency with the City General Plan. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Rivas. Does anyone have a question for him on the staff report or any of the attachments? No. Okay. I'll open this up for public comment. If you would please state your name for the record.
Amy Briggs.
Good evening.
I am under the belief that we already have 2 projects that will satisfy our need for low-income housing, Cottonwood and Mallard. I am not in favor of building right next to our fairgrounds. This is an integral staging area for CAL FIRE, and this Armory Lane, they need to get right onto Highway 50, and I believe this would offer them egress onto Mallard Lane. Is that correct? Pierre?
Could you ask that question to the chair, and then
Okay,
the
to
chair
the chair.
will then ask?
So
staff
if
the
we give this land to the state of California, this would give them an extra fire exit to what location? Is it Armory?
As I understand it, actually, it says in the staff report, this is access to the Clementine Apartments.
Right. So these apartments would only have one entrance, I believe, originally, if they only have this property that's already owned by the state. This would give them another entrance and exit?
As I understand it, in the and I saw this in the environmental document that they prepared for the project, it was already incorporated into the project so that the site plan showed this access as well as another one that comes off of, I believe, Ray Lawyer Drive.
Okay.
And so what we...
So they're already assuming that the city of Placerville is gifting them this?
It is the county, El Dorado County, that owns the property. It is within the city limits of Placerville. Right. So the procedure is that the city of Placerville is, the business before us but tonight is, is for us to determine that the proposed gifting and transfer of the property from the county to the state for incorporation into the Clementine Affordable Housing Project is in conformance with the goals and policies of the city. So it's, yeah, it is a bit confusing because it's
Right.
it's owned, independently owned, but within the city.
Okay. So is it within the city's goals to eliminate our access to have a fire camp.
I
the
don't
fairgrounds?
think that
Because
that is
this would-
a goal, and
This would
I'm
block
not-
access, so
sure.
it's an 80-unit apartment complex, correct? 83. So at least possibly 160 adult people who might have vehicles in this area now, where we have our fire camp during the summer and the fall, like blocking access to emergency response
Well, I
for
don't,
wildfire?
Chair Keeney, if I
I'll
could
turn
I am
this
just
just
over to you,
add some
because I don't
clarification
know where the
here.
fire camp is held.
Do we have an alternative
this-
location for a fire camp?
So, Mr. Rivas?
Yes, the item before you is the transfer of the .48 acre parcel. That's
Right.
being gifted from the County of El Dorado to the state of California. This hearing is not about the Clementine Affordable Housing Project.
But if we
a
do
larger
not gift
project.
them the land, they can't build the apartments. Is that correct?
That is not correct.
Okay. They just don't have the parking they want.
We would be denying them additional parking. But again, I want to emphasize, this hearing is not about the affordable housing project.
Right.
It's on the transfer of the subject property.
Okay.
to become
And this,
part of the
but
But the
apartment
access
project.
would be
excuse me,
Armory Lane?
Ms. Brooks, the inclusion of this particular
BRIGGS,
parcel
Briggs?
was in the original environmental document. So for the public review that was done for that mitigated negative deck, it did show this, including this particular parcel. This isn't new to the project,
Okay.
this parcel.
That is correct.
Okay.
This parcel was fully included in that environmental document.
So this is just a process of gifting that particular parcel that has already been considered in the mitigated or environmental review document?
It was a mitigated negative declaration that was prepared and approved.
Okay.
So this has already been decided and no public comment could change it?
Right, the public comment tonight needs to be focused on whether this is consistent with our general plan. So, thank you very
So
much.
since we already have the low-income housing, I say we sell it to the state and not gift it.
Well, that's not
because
before
we
us tonight.
we do
and,
not-
I'm going to ask you to please bring a close to your comments. So we usually let people speak for about 3 minutes, but I understand that you have concerns. Is there anything about the issue before us as far as the consistency with our general plan that you'd like to speak to?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and if you would please state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Kathy Duncack. I'm the CEO of El Dorado County Fairgrounds. And a couple of things I'd like to make points. First of all, the Board of Supervisors has not yet agreed to transfer that property to Department of General Services. They actually met today in closed session to discuss that. I did go before them and ask them to postpone that decision. I believe there's another parcel within our county that is much more suitable for that property. A quick housekeeping note, during the public comment time period, I believe it was May to June of &22, am I correct, Pierre? Is that right? Before they prepared the mitigated declaration, many of us that love our fairgrounds wrote to the Department of General Services, according to the address that they provided, in protest and gave our reasons for this property. And I have an email, which I didn't bring with me, but they lost those before that report was put out. And after I saw the report, I started writing some emails asking them where was all the public comment regarding this, and they finally found them and did an amended blah, blah, whatever it was. Anyways, I really felt like that was kind of shady. So I think that, and I did see the letter from facilities requesting that this commission approve this transfer. However, I think that request was premature, as that transfer hasn't happened yet. It might not happen, it might not happen, it might have happened today, I don't know, but you don't know that either. You talk about inconsistent with the general plan. And again, it's probably a moot point, but nothing about this project is consistent with the city's general plan. We don't have 4-story apartments. There's inadequate parking. They're proposing 96 parking spaces for 83 one, two, and three-bedroom apartment complexes, or excuse me, one-bedroom apartments, with, when you figure average 2 people per unit, caretakers, babysitters, employees of that apartment complex, Ray Lawyer Drive is going to be packed full of vehicles. And I don't know if any of you have ever tried to pull out of Armory Road onto Ray Lawyer Drive during an event at the fairgrounds when there's cars parked there. It's impossible. During our last fire camp, I took a lot of video. There are large vehicles accessing the fairgrounds 24/7 during the fire camp. And with that project there, I do believe, and I have spoke to members of CAL FIRE and Cal OES, they are concerned about this. If we can't host a fire camp in El Dorado County, that's going to be bad news. So I would really, truly urge you to, first of all, wait until this property has actually been transferred, if it is going to be transferred or sold, before you make your recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else care to comment on the?
Chair Keeney, if I may, just for
yes.
clarification, the City Planning Commission is obligated to make a decision or a determination of the consistency prior to the transfer of the property,
Right.
not after.
Right.
That's a good point. Very good.
Yes, Mr.
Good
Drobich,
evening.
welcome
So,
back.
good evening. I understand this is supposed to be a formality. The county wants to give the land to the state so the state can build their affordable housing and ignore all local regulations, general plan, zoning, everything. The dictator, the governor of California, wrote an executive order during COVID and said, local jurisdictions, piss off. We are going to take this land, we're going to do what we want with it. You can't even inspect it. We don't care what you think, pound sand. So I would like you to make the reach possible that this is a violation of our general plan, our zoning, and our regulations, because giving this parcel makes this project feasible. It gives them the extra egress, it gives them the extra parking, and they can do the project. So this could be a wrench. So that's my request. I don't know the law. If you don't respond within 40 days, if it just goes ahead, and then the county can do whatever they want. So that's a question for staff. The request for postponement, I don't know if that overrides the 40-day rule, but I think you could say the granting of this property does violate our general plan and zoning because it makes this project feasible. Without this parcel, they're up a creek, kind of. They might make adjustments. They might have to take a story off the building. Do we even have a fire truck ladder that can reach 4 stories? So there's a lot of problems with this. We've already met our RENA numbers with 2 giant projects, over off of Placerville Drive. And because it is so on-site parking is so limited, they're going to overflow onto Armory, overflow onto Ray Lawyer, and the city's either going to have to, through a public nuisance, make it no parking for anybody, because how do you regulate residents spilling onto local streets? So just my request and some things to consider. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I just had a question to clear up, because I'm confused. We have before us a request that came in just before the meeting for a continuance. And then we're hearing comments. It seems like it should be the other way around. So,
Well, if you remember, as Mr. Ribas explained at the start of this item, we have options, and it was recommendation of staff to go ahead and take public comment at this time because this was agendized. People may have taken time out of their schedules to come.
I agree.
Speak to us tonight. So when we close public comment tonight, we can consider postponing it, or we can consider taking action. So
Thank
we
you.
have options.
That does clear it up.
Because that's a courtesy to the public who, people who, may not be able to.
I'm all in
comment
favor of
2
hearing
weeks.
from the public, believe
So
me.
that's why we're taking public comment
Thank
right
you.
now. Okay. Anyone else? Sorry for that interruption. Please step up if you would state your name for the record.
Ruth Carter, City of Placerville. I would like to ask this commission to deny giving this parcel to the state and
Okay, I'm sorry, that's not the, and I apologize to you, I've not made this clear to the previous speakers. That's not our
I didn't
decision
even get
tonight.
to
Our
finish
decision
my
tonight
comment
is
because
see
nothing
whether
about this plan is consistent with the
So
general
it is
plan
not
is
us-
my next.
our ability to gift, so please go ahead, with that in mind.
That was exactly what I was going to say. Nothing about this project is within our general plan because the state can do whatever they want. And they have made that clear. They bypassed all of their normal regulations in terms of inspections and reports, environmental, traffic, all of that. They can bypass everything. And so I'm asking that this commission deny giving this property over because it does not conform to our general plan. That's it, plain and simple. It does create a safety hazard. It does create a myriad of problems with the fairgrounds and with the fire camp and with public safety in general. So I am asking that the commission deny it due to the fact it does not fall under our general plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anyone else from the audience like to speak to this subject? Okay, good evening.
Evening. My name's Sean Briggs. People have already said a lot of the important points, but I had one question and one point as far as the continuance that was mentioned. If this is there's going to be a continuance on this, then I think all the public comments right now should be taken into account, but I don't think you should actually close it. You should be able to have public comments after the final.
I believe that, Mr. Rivas, that would be the procedure. If we did continue it, then we could open it up for public comment when we revisit.
That would be the prerogative of the Planning Commission, but it is not required unless you had substantially new information or something. Basically, what you would be doing is then you would take all the public testimony that were here at this hearing, and then you would open up you would close the public hearing tonight, and then when it's continued, then it would be Planning Commission deliberation.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, the only concern I would have there is relevant change by whose definition? Like something that the commission or staff or any other person thinks is not a relevant change or big enough change for comments, maybe something that's important enough to bring additional public in to make comments on. So,
Madam Chair, a point of clarification, if I may, through staff. So, Pierre, we have the option this evening of continuing the public hearing, right? So not closing the public hearing, but continuing it. Or we can close the public hearing tonight and then postpone decision to a later date. And then it's our prerogative as to whether or not we reopen the public hearing. But we could leave the public hearing open and simply postpone that. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And if you feel you have sufficient information regarding this particular parcel, not the Clementine apartment, that's not what's before you.
Right, that I understand.
You could make a finding of consistency tonight and take your action.
So,
You don't have to continue it.
Okay, thank you.
You would have to take action.
Sure.
To continue an item to a date, sir.
Thank you. So I personally, for the benefit of my fellow commissioners, I would be in favor of continuing the public hearing, not closing it per se, but continuing that. That's just kind of where I'm at now.
We have someone at the podium. Do you have anything further you'd like to add?
no, that was the main thing. As other people have said, I don't think that this falls in line with the general plan or past direction of the city. I don't think that it will fit in with our safety infrastructure. But main thing was I wanted to make sure that people would be able to speak.
Thank you.
Oh.
Anyone else have a comment for the Planning Commission?
I'd like to make a motion.
Wait a second, Mr. Smith had something.
Yeah, I'd like to hear some discussion because, first of all, I think that if we do come back on this matter, there necessarily would be testimony if someone steps forward to provide it. So we just don't cut it off, nor do we suggest we'll only hear you if you've got something new to say. That's not for us to decide. So if we come back, whether it's to hear from this developer or not, that's the answer. You have to hear from anybody who shows up next time, that's our obligation. And I don't know why we can't decide on the request for continuance and move on it now and then go forward, if necessary, to the next matter. It's extraordinary to ask for a continuance request at the last minute. The executive for the county didn't show up. The person who heads this particular operation for the county didn't show up, though his name is on here, nor did anybody from the corporation show up. The corporation presumably consists of more than one person, and there are more than one officer. And why they didn't show up, and there's no reason given to ask these people to come back a second time. So I'm not disposed towards granting it in the first place. I haven't heard any extraordinary reason to justify it. We've got a couple of sentences, and it consists of one statement. Due to the developer, Jamboree Housing Corporation, being unable to attend. That doesn't tell us why. Was there health reasons?
Well,
Death in the family?
That's relevant. So at this time, I think I'm going to close the public comment portion of this proceeding and bring it back for full discussion among the commission. I think we need to I realize that this is a somewhat controversial project, but our job is to pass on to the city council whether or not we find that is consistent that the proposed gifting and transfer of the subject
Chair
property.
Keeney, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned pass to the city council. Nothing goes to the city council. So there's only one circumstance where that could happen. The only issue that I see is this we have 40 days to render a decision, or it's automatically considered consistent with the general plan. But within that time frame, if, say, for example, the commission were to find it inconsistent with the general plan, then the city council can overturn and find it consistent with the general plan.
So if we take no
But your action is final.
the city council action is final?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm, through the, Madam Chair, if I may, and to staff, I'm really confused on this. We have two parcels, right? They have separate parcel numbers, right? And then just for sake of discussion, at least in my packet, one APN, the small project that we're talking about, parcel we're talking about, is depicted in yellow, and then the other one's in green, which is to be where the apartments, the Clementine will actually be built, if I understand this correctly, right?
That's correct.
I'm confused as to whether or not we have any say regarding the Clementine, and/or if the Clementine requires this other smaller parcel. Could the Clementine project be constructed if we deny the gifting of the smaller parcel? I mean, I don't understand this. I'm going to be quite frank that I don't understand.
It's a small provision in state law that requires this finding of consistency whenever there's a transfer of property from a government.
Okay, that I get.
Either
Okay, that I get.
disposing or acquiring. It's just it's sort of a formality, but it is required.
Okay,
In this
so
particular
again,
case.
sorry for, I don't mean to overtalk you, Pierre, I apologize. But if we were to deny the gifting of this small piece that we're talking about right along Railway Drive, what is the ultimate impact on the Clementine project?
It probably means they'll have 10 less parking spaces and one less entrance. They'll only have then one access point.
But they can still build it. I
That's
mean,
correct.
yeah, that's
The
still
state
going to
has-
happen.
state
Nothing we
has
can do that's going to
sovereignty
prevent
over this
that.
parcel. It's state-owned property.
Okay, so if we say something is not, and to my fellow commissioners, just so I understand the logic here, if we say the gifting is not consistent with our general plan, and I would love nothing more than to say that, frankly, but I don't understand my reasoning for saying that gifting this little piece of property is not consistent with the general plan, because the bigger issue, the Clementine, the big green thing, is going to happen regardless, right? So you understand my confusion?
Right, and so that if we find that it's not consistent, then we just further impact the state's project on its state-owned land by reducing some parking and by eliminating that other access.
And I'm happy to do that, just for the record. I'm way happy to do that.
Yes, and also it's important to remember that the mitigating factors in the negative declaration were based on this plot being there. I mean, that was part of how they evaluated.
That was their project.
And so this probably would force them into additional environmental review. They're not just going to be able to build it without this parcel. They'd have to do additional environmental review because their environmental review included this parcel as part of their negative declaration.
Okay, so what is our basis then, but what would be our basis for finding the gifting itself is inconsistent with the general plan?
I've got 5 specific
Okay,
things.
I'm ready to go.
Well, I think that if it's okay with my fellow commissioners, I think it's appropriate to continue this. And I do think it's absolutely appropriate to keep the public, not the comment, but the hearing open as part of the continuation in order to allow for public comment. So I would move that we keep the public hearing open and move it to a date certain of October 1st as requested by the county.
Motion, second.
Well, I disagree with that motion. I really don't see the purpose of continuing this. The public has spoken, and decision makers have heard their concerns, which have been addressed in an environmental document. What's before us is to find that the act of gifting is consistent with our general plan, and having read our staff report, I can't come to any other conclusion except that it is. And just by putting up an administrative roadblock, I'm not sure how that addresses any concern that's been expressed by the public tonight about the public, and in fact could cause the project to be, less safe, have poorer circulation than what has already been considered and in the existing environmental document.
Well, please clear up something for me, because I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the only issue before us, apart from a continuance, is whether what's proposed is consistent with the general plan.
Whether the gifting of a parcel from the county to the state of California is consistent. That is what is before us.
Okay.
And that's what will be still before us if we continue the item.
And so far, I haven't heard any reasons advanced. I've heard reasons advanced as to why it's not consistent with the general plan, but I haven't heard any as to why it is consistent with the general plan so far.
We can, but let's go a little bit more. So if I could speak to the chair's comments. One of the reasons I would like this, one of the reasons, let me back up, sorry. The chair described our possible action, if we were to deny it, as simply an administrative roadblock, and it might be conceived, I could see how it be construed as an administrative roadblock. However, from what I've heard this evening, the state didn't necessarily do their due diligence in the preparation of their environmental review document, and they assumed that they were going to have this piece. And I'm not opposed to compelling the state to having to go back and revisit this project in light of them not having this piece of property here. And there were some reasons that were offered by some of the audience as to why this is potentially a bad idea. And so I don't think it's a clear cut, I don't think it's just, well, we're just going to put up an administrative roadblock. I think there's a legitimate basis for, I think maybe we want the state to go back and look at this, and maybe this doesn't work for us. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I would support the motion. I second it, so obviously I support it. But the motion as it is to continue this, there's no harm in the continuance. And it gives, frankly, for me, it gives me a chance to delve into this a little bit deeper, because I really fail to appreciate the significance of what's going on here. Wouldn't mind a little bit more time. And I would like to see representatives from the county and the state and the developer. I'd like to see them come here. And maybe they'll get the message that, there's a risk. I don't know if it's a good risk or not, but there's a risk that this may not be found to be consistent with our general plan. And that might compel them to be here to present and then to offer some additional insight. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, the reason I would be in favor of the continuance is because of the request of the county. So I would be in favor of it for many other reasons, obviously, that we've all talked about. It's a little bit hairier than, I tend to agree with the chair that it's pretty straightforward, but also I understand what the points that everyone has made, and with the request from the county, then I would be in favor of a continuance to October 1st.
Mr. Smith?
I would accommodate my colleagues for the idea of a continuance, but at the same time, make it clear that I see no reason to, rather than an administrative roadblock, I don't want to be an administrative rubber stamp. I'm not here to rubber stamp and say, this has consistency with the general plan, when what I've heard so far is it's not consistent with the general plan. And there's a basic principle of administrative law, or just plain due process, that the movement has the burden of persuasion. The movement isn't here, other than by paper on behalf of, through somebody else. But the movement hasn't shown why it's consistent with the general plan. And we've heard plenty to show why it isn't. But I'm willing to accommodate my colleagues to say, okay, you want a bigger record, go to it. But my inclination is, sorry, you failed to meet your burden of persuasion. And there's nothing in here that shows extraordinary reasons. You didn't say anything about someone's seriously ill. Was it death? That is required. That is required. You don't have any, any elements to show why it's needed. But again, I'll accommodate my colleagues who want to explore it further. Thank you.
Okay.
Recall the question.
I had one more comment, but since you're...
I'll yield.
Question. Let's go ahead and vote on the continuance. Ms. Hunter, would you please call the vote?
Vice Chair Carter?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Aye.
Chair Keeney?
No.
Commissioner Lepper?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
So this item is continued to...
Date certain, your October 1st meeting, regular meeting.
I'm sorry, our first...
To your regular meeting on October the 1st.
October 1st, regular meeting. All right. We will continue the item at that time. All right. So we'll move on to item 10.3, General Plan Amendment 24-01, Zone Change 24-
Chair, I'm sorry, could I ask for just a 5-minute recess?
All right, we'll take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back at 7:15. Okay, it's 7:13, and I'm going to call our meeting back to order. We're all back on the dais, and staff is back in place. Let's move on to 10.3, the General Plan Amendment 24-0 and Zone Change 24-07. And this is back to Ms. Hunter for the staff report.
Thank you. I actually have a presentation as well. So putting it up on the board now. So all applications for general plan amendments and rezones within the city of Placerville are legislative actions requiring the review and recommendation of the Planning Commission to the City Council with final approval by City Council. The subject parcel, shown on the screen, is located between Madrone Lane and Maureen Drive near the northern boundary of the city's jurisdiction. The 7.64-acre parcel is undeveloped and densely vegetated. The parcel is currently designated low-density residential and is zoned R120 single-family residential. The current designation and zoning allows for 2.81 dwelling units per acre and half-acre minimum lot sizes. This rezone changes the potential development of 16 lots to maintaining the existing single lot. The property owner proposes to change the land use designation of the parcel from low-density residential to rural residential, and the zone classification from R120 single-family residential to estate residential, which has a minimum parcel size of 5 acres. It is the intent of the applicant to raise miniature horses on the property. The purposes and allowable uses for low-density residential and rural residential designations are provided in Table 2 of the staff report and on the screen. Overall, the low-density residential designation provides for the development of single-family uses at lower densities in areas often constrained by terrain and topography, while the rural residential designation provides for very low-density development of single-family uses in rural areas, allowing for agricultural uses that are compatible with the residential character of the area while protecting open space and habitats. Similarly, the purposes, authorized uses, and general regulations of the R120 and estate residential zones are provided in Table 3 and on the screen. The proposed zone amendment to estate residential shall allow the development of the subject parcel under a 5-acre minimum lot size while maintaining the rural area character and supporting the existing lifestyle in the established Madrone Lane and Maureen Drive neighborhoods. Within the city's zoning ordinance, there are only 2 single-family zone classifications that allow for the keeping of hooved animals, R1A and estate residential. Within 500 feet of the parcel, to the north and south, are properties designated rural residential and zoned R1A. The primary differences between R1A and estate residential is that R1A has a minimum parcel size of 1 acre and allows for a maximum of 2 hooved animals, while estate residential is a 5-acre minimum and allows for greater than 2 hooved animals. It should be noted that estate residential is not equivalent to a commercial agricultural zone. It is a single-family zone classification for development at low densities that allow for accessory uses to the principal single-family use, which include livestock and growing of crops. For clarification, the property owner cannot operate a commercial ag business on the property. Given the proximity of rural residential land use and R1A to the project, as well as the fact that the proposed zone is low-density single-family development, staff does not view the application as inconsistent with the surrounding uses. Both Madrone Lane and Maureen Drive are rural roads. The Institute of Transportation Engineers, or ITE, manual estimates the single-family residential uses generate an average of 10 trips per dwelling per day. This number is influenced by family size, distance from stores, and online shopping. The subject parcel is 7.6 acres in size, with a maximum dwelling unit capacity of approximately 16 dwelling units. Based on the city's analysis of the property, build-out is likely in the realm of 7 units. Not including accessory units, as ITE does not provide an estimate for ADUs, maximum build-out at 16 units would result in an increase of 160 trips per day. Staff's estimate of realistic build-out, 7 units, would generate 70 additional trips per day. The proposed project increases trips by 10 with 1 dwelling unit. Parcels within a 300-foot vicinity of the subject parcel range from 0.39 acres to 6.6 acres, with an average parcel size of roughly 1.5 acres. The neighborhoods of Madrone Lane and Maureen Drive are already fairly developed. It is unlikely that any residential development of sufficient size could occur within the area to generate revenue available to improve the roads beyond their current condition. As previously mentioned, the area surrounding the subject parcels is primarily rural, with a mix of varied lot sizes, residential uses, agricultural uses, open areas, and dense vegetation. The proposed amendment and rezone would not result in impacts to the existing roadways. Additionally, the characteristic rural country atmosphere of the project vicinity would be maintained. The subject parcel is included in the city's available land inventory, which provides a list of vacant parcels sorted pursuant to their zoning and estimated realistic unit capacity. Development of both R120 and estate residential parcels fall within the moderate to above moderate income category. Not including the subject parcel, the city has adequate vacant land to meet its regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA, for the moderate and above moderate income units, and development of the parcel as proposed would aid the city in meeting its share of moderate to above moderate income units. Staff did receive public comment on the project. 6 comments were received prior to the distribution of the Planning Commission packets and were included in attachment 2 of your staff report. Staff received 5 additional comments following distribution. These comments were distributed prior to the meeting, with copies posted to the city's website and located at the back of the room. Based on staff's analysis included in the staff report, staff respectfully requests that the Planning Commission take the following action. Adopt the staff report as part of the public record, make the findings in support of the general plan amendment and rezone request, and make the following recommendations to the City Council. That the City Council approve General Plan Amendment 24-01 to amend the land use diagram from low-density residential to rural residential for the subject 7.64 acre parcel, and that the City Council approve Zone Change 24-07 to amend the Placerville zoning map from R120 single-family residential zone to estate residential for the 7.6 acre parcel, APN 050-401-018. This concludes staff's report.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hunter. I had one question. The applicant states that they intend to raise miniature horses and llamas on the property. Is that action, raising those animals on a property of this size, would that be allowed under say, a variance or a conditional use permit? Is there a path for approval for that kind of use if it would not be rezoned?
The property was, if the property was not rezoned, it would not be permitted.
Not even with a variance or a conditional use permit?
That's correct.
Okay.
The R120 does not allow animals, with the exception of, we did a code amendment that allows raising of chickens, up to 6 chickens.
Right, we have an ordinance that specifies that.
With no roosters.
With no roosters.
We, why isn't there a path? We issue conditional use permits for parcels for a wide range of uses. Why doesn't that exist now?
Because it doesn't exist now in our code.
Because it doesn't exist. So to allow this applicant to proceed with, what they desire to do with their property, the rezoning is the only path available?
That's the only path available unless we want to look at re-examining our zoning code and do something, say, in the nature of, and I've seen this in a lot of other jurisdictions, where if you have a large parcel, then you're allowed to have so many animals per acre, that sort of a thing. I've seen that. That's quite common in the more rural, the larger residential land designation, so that people can have a horse or a couple of horses, that kind of thing. But here, I just want to make the point that in the code, it cannot be a nuisance. It's not like you're going to be able to put 50 mini horses on there and 20 llamas.
And that brings up another question I had. What is then the path if it does become a nuisance to the adjoining property owners? How can they have their concerns addressed?
Then typically staff would work with El Dorado County Animal Services and then take enforcement action if there is a nuisance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Those are the only questions I have. Anyone else have a question about the staff report?
No, that was my question as well, about what next steps could be taken should it become a nuisance. And I actually did call Kristen today and discuss that. And she helped me clarify of what because my concern being the long-term impact of what could happen, she helped clarify that there are paths for that, so.
Okay.
Avoiding nuisance.
For a property owner, nearby property owner to file a complaint about regardless of, to file a complaint to have that addressed by the city or animal services?
That's correct.
Okay. Is the property owner, Ms. Martin, present? Would you like to step up to the podium? Is there anything you'd like to add or emphasize?
I assume you're opening the public hearing?
Yeah, were there any further questions?
No. No, normally we'd say,
sorry.
yeah. Open the public hearing for discussion. Yeah.
Right, for comment
Yeah.
from the applicant
Yeah.
and from the public.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Good evening, Ms. Martin.
Hi, my name is Sandy Martin. I'm from Placerville. I grew up here in Placerville, went away to college, got my professional degree, and then came back. And I like to make a home in El Dorado County and on Madrone Lane. My parents live on Madrone Lane and have for almost 40 years. And so my goal is to have a house. I have many horses, which technically they're not like grazing, they're a few rescues. And so is what I have. And then the llama came in because it's a lot of land, so it's gonna have to have some vegetation control. Because I did have it masticated this year to help with fire prevention, but that is very costly. So to continue to do that as it grows, it'd be easier to have and less impact on the land, just to have some management there with some of the, like a llama. So that was the thought there. So that's the goals of my property. I did talk with Pierre and Kristen, and it was my understanding that a rezone is the process in which to actually be able to live that. And so I really love El Dorado County. I love the rural character of it. I think that the rezone would definitely support that rural character lifestyle. I think it's very consistent with what is in the neighborhood. I have several of my actual neighbors are here in support, and they are diverse, everything from people that are just starting families on the street to people that have lived on the street for decades and are at retirement age, and that's going to be their retirement place. So I went to our road association meeting this spring and talked, not formally, just I was there because I'm a property owner, and just, I try to let as many people know that, it's zoned half acre. My intent is to have a house, and I want my mini horses. So I'm going to probably rezone and apply for that. And so that's where I'm at today. I ask for your guys' support. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. And thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Martin? Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
I do, but it's largely for just curiosity to figure out your plan. So if you have horses there, does that mean you have to build fencing around the property, number one?
Yeah, I'll have to fence the property at some point, but it's a lot of land and fencing is very expensive, so I do not think I'd probably fence
So with that much acreage, you have to clear vegetation. Would the horses be able to do that, or do you have to add goats, or what?
I don't plan on doing goats. I masticated what they can masticate, which is a good almost most of that acreage, because it was all manzanita and it had not been cleared since I was told like the 60s and everything. So it was like 10 feet high, densely vegetated, and it was dead. I was hoping that some of it, because it's beautiful, was able to be kept, but it was completely dead. So they ended up having, there's small patches of it left, but they completely had to do that. So when you see it now, what you guys saw in the original picture from the satellite scope, that is what the property looked like when I purchased it. And then more the pictures that Kristen or someone at the city took, that is what you see now, where it's more open because the trees have remained, but essentially the dead manzanita left and everything.
I'd like to just state for the record that I live on Maureen, and I want to thank you for that vegetation management that you did conduct. I've lived on that road for over 30 years, and I remember one time I lost a dog and we had to try to get through that manzanita. So I know what your starting material was, and I want to appreciate you. I want you to know that we appreciate your work to reduce that fire danger, try to navigate your own property.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was costly.
I'm sure it
but I
was.
think it was needed.
Yeah.
I mean, for fire
Those manzanita
prevention.
trees were, 10 feet or more, manzanita bushes, I should say. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was definitely worth it. Hopefully fire harden the area and make it safer.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Mr. Carter. You have
Just a side note, get in touch with the Fire Safe Council because they'll be able to utilize your mastication to help us with our fire safe community. So make sure you let them know, and they'll take the amount that you spent and the hours that you spent, and that is credited towards the whole city's fire defensive. So just, yeah, reach out to the Fire Safe Council and let them know, and they can include that in our fire safe community numbers. So I encourage you to do that.
Okay, I can do that. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, please, anything else you want to add at this time? Go ahead and have a seat, and we're going to open this up for public comment. Would anyone like to speak about the project? Please step up, state your name for the record. Welcome.
Thank you. Ruth Carter, City of Placerville. This is actually in our neighborhood. So I just wanted to say a few things. Rezoning to rural estate takes a proactive approach. Instead of leaving the land in limbo with potential for unmanaged growth and fire hazards, the rural estate zoning allows for the property to be put to productive use. Larger animals can support the grazing animals, and responsible land management, which reduces the vegetation and fire risks. Additionally, high-density development is unlikely to occur anyway. Keeping the zoning in place would only lead to further delays or risks without offering the benefit of well-managed, low-density use. I urge the commission to approve the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Tony Agricola, and I live on Madrone Lane. And I just want to say, in support of this, I moved here in 1985. There were 20 homes on the road. There's 41 now. And it's with a single-family home. It really is consistent with the light growth that we have, because our road will not support more and more houses. It's already getting kind of crazy, and they're a great family, and they're great stewards of the road. So, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the commission about the project? Welcome back.
Hello. So I would be in favor of approving the request because property owner has fair use right to their land and their property, and the impacts I don't think are a problem. There's also a process if there are impacts to mitigate it and say, hey, can you cull the herd or do something. And I understand this isn't going to be actually ag zoned, but we have so little of that in this city, until we go and see Smith Flat. But we don't have this kind of zoning in the city. It would make us more balanced, is my point. And the impact, there is significant fire danger of the fire coming up and over this area. So with fewer homes to burn, it is a fair consideration to have a nice break in a cluster of homes. And the impacts to the road, I agree that I don't see how the traffic impact fees and all the fees collected are going to improve these roads. If we're talking, potential 160 plus daily traffic trips, not counting ADUs, which are now by right, the potential impacts of building that out at current zoning look pretty catastrophic. So, yeah, I agree, and it's probably going to get, rezoned in 10 to 20 years to a higher density anyway, so let her enjoy her land for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dina Keltner, and I moved here in April of 2023 to Madrone Lane to get out of the Bay Area and get away from overgrowth and provide my autistic son with a more rural area. So I think what Ms. Martin is trying to do is just keep the neighborhood as it is. We honestly do not have the road infrastructure to support more growth, more housing, and I do worry about the safety issues in case there wasn't a fire or an evacuation. I did want to ask, though, that you brought up the usage under current zoning. Can you remind me what that is?
Yeah, I'll ask staff on your behalf, but I think it is outlined in tables 2 and 3 of the staff report, the current allowed uses versus the allowed uses under the proposed rezone.
That's correct. Yeah, we do have a table. So right now, it's zoned R120, so single-family residential, half-acre lots, allows for an ADU and a JADU within the existing footprint of the building. So
Okay.
does that answer?
I think there was something up there about domestic violence shelters, those types of things. Is that under current zoning or is that under proposed zoning?
Correct. That is under the current zoning, and that's just by our zoning code. Those are
Okay.
allowable uses.
So if she would switch to the rural, that would not apply to that?
It's still allowed, yes.
Still allowed on either or?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. That's the clarification I was looking for. Thank you.
thank you. Hello.
Hi, my name's Andrea Tierce, and I was one opposed to the change, but it was more, there was been lack of communication. If somebody had come and knocked on our door and explained, and Sandy was saying that she talked about it at the road meeting, and I was at the road meeting, but didn't pay attention to that. I was paying attention to the road stuff. And I'm getting a lot of clarity with what was explained today. So I'm feeling better about if it does change. But I do have questions about the number of animals, because it hasn't been made clear. If you change to the rural estate, is it unlimited, the number of animals? I know you said you could make a complaint if there's a nuisance, but is there any regular, like it was discussed, so many animals per acre if you did, something like that, but I haven't heard exactly what's the cap on the number of animals that you can have. Sandy says she's not going to have that many, but in the future, somebody else could come in, and I think that would be a detriment to having so many animals, a big herd or something like that. So what is the number of animals that it would be limited to? I know you said, well, if you get up to 50 horses and 20 llamas, you can make a nuisance complaint, but is there a limit?
Please, go ahead. Can you answer that?
No, we don't have an answer. So basically, it is unlimited until it becomes a nuisance. And what those numbers are, we do not know.
So
Nobody's going to put 50 animals on there.
And I would offer that you could have a nuisance with one noisy mule and one noisy horse, right? I mean, I think our principle is you can pretty much do whatever you want with your property so long as it does not deny your neighbors the fair and reasonable use of their property. So noise and smell and traffic and all those things kind of becomes the guiding rule. So so instead of a hard number, okay, that's why we don't allow roosters, right? Because we allow chickens, but it only takes one rooster to really change the environment, as it were. And so that's really the guiding principle. So that's kind of how it works.
So it's vague. I mean, I could say it's a nuisance, but
Undefined.
and neighbors could say it's not a nuisance, kind of
Right.
thing. So,
But then we have enforcement. So
yeah.
animal services and city staff would go out and they'd make a determination.
Make a determination.
You're right. Not someone may claim a nuisance,
Yeah.
and then the city has to adjudicate whether or not it is.
Okay, and I got the clarity that the R120 and the rural estate, basically, both of them, they can put a domestic violence shelter up, or they can put housing for their employees or what have you on their property. So that cleared that up. And then I guess the other one, the commercial ag business, you're saying that you can't put a commercial ag business on, so you can't open up a fruit stand or something like that.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so I'm getting more clarity, and it would have been nice to have this getting this notice in the mail was the first I'd heard of, sank in. And this is not very clear on what the use was going to be.
Right.
So
There's much more detail given in the staff report that was
yeah.
published for this meeting.
Right.
Right.
But what we had was this to start with, and so
Yeah,
that was not
I
very clear.
appreciate that, but appreciate you coming down, taking note, and taking time to come down and talk to us about your concerns.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to comment on the project or on the rezone?
Yeah, honestly, I don't live near there. I'm on the other end of town. But I would actually urge you guys to go ahead and approve it simply because you've got a resident that is being proactive on following the rules. They're being proactive on managing the property. May as well reward it.
Would anyone else like to address the commission? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone coming down and taking time. Also, I want to make a note that we also received some written comments. We always appreciate that. People taking time to send an email that is included in the packet. So thank you very much. And I'll close the public comment portion of our environmental review and bring it back to the commission for discussion. My concern with this is that it's a single parcel. If we look back, actually the zoning map is much clearer on this, but there's a couple of diagrams in our staff report. And as I mentioned, I live on Maureen Drive, not within the, I didn't get a notice about this project, so I'm not that close by. But I do walk the street regularly, and this is a different use, on Maureen at least, and I can't really comment. You can see there are smaller parcels just directly across on Madrone, but the idea of raising horses there on Maureen, that's a new idea. So I'm very concerned about that. I'm concerned about the potential for a nuisance, not from this applicant, but as we know, properties change hands. And so once we rezone, then it's much more difficult to rezone back to something more densely developable, if you will, because then you have to address CEQA again, because then you have, as we saw in our staff report, when you downzone, there's less of an impact. And from the CEQA standpoint, that's very, that's good, that's beneficial. We look for reduced impact. But I'm also looking at suitability for the surrounding current property owners. The other thing that, and Pierre and I discussed this earlier tonight, or earlier today, to me, this is a dictionary definition of spot zoning. It is a single parcel. And if we look at, thank you for putting that up, showing the other R120s. If you look, to the east and a little bit to the south, there are several large parcels, maybe not quite as big as this one. It's kind of hard for us to say right now. But if the concerns that are addressed in the staff report, things like impacts to the roads and, that we have substandard roads in this area already, changing the zoning and this parcel is going to reduce the impacts on our existing roads. Well, if it's true for this parcel, then it's true for the adjoining parcels. And so I've got to say, I'm just not comfortable looking at a single parcel. If, as I said, if it applies to this one, then I really think it's better planning practice for the city to look at that area. And if this is the direction we want to go, to take these parcels out of that potential to subdivide into, half-acre parcels, then it makes more sense to me to look at that area and rezone all of those properties to this estate residential. So those are some of my concerns. Those are my concerns about this particular project. I appreciate the comments we've heard that this is a conscientious land owner, and I've seen, her taking care of the property already. But once we make this change, it's in perpetuity. It's very difficult to revert back. I'd like to hear from
Madam Chair, if to your point regarding the surrounding parcels, And a suggestion that perhaps the consideration should be to rezone those parcels similar to what the applicant is doing.
And the ones that are not developed, I want to.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough, but maybe I'm not understanding, but it seems to me that would be a taking, because if, I mean, this applicant actually has the potential for subdividing, right, and selling off and doing all kinds of development, and other parcels would similarly then. And so if we were to consider, well, I think it's an upzoning, right?
No, it wouldn't be enough, that's the current zoning. So-
Okay, well, it'd be downzoning, so it'd be a taking. If we were to do that with the other parcels, that would be a taking. In this case, the owner of the property says, hey, you know, I could have, what was it, 16 units in this parcel, but I don't want to do that. I want to keep this parcel and I want to do this instead. And so, wow, how refreshing and different that is, one. Also, to me, it's like, man, Placerville's a city, but boy, I sure love the rural elements that we have. And any opportunity we have to preserve the rural nature, man, I'm all for it. In terms of the use and nuisance and all that, I mean, technically, anyone could start something on their property with no changes, and it could become a nuisance. And there's a process, a mechanism for addressing those nuisances. The only negative, I just be real clear, the negative is, of course, impacting the RENA, right?
Right.
But it's not on this individual, okay, to have to make a decision that way. Here's an opportunity with a parcel that they own, because if they choose not to subdivide it, it doesn't support the RENA, doesn't add anything to the RENA. So I like it. I'm fully in support of what this applicant is requesting. I think there's no negative, and then we can balance the RENA with the fire safety component and the land management that we're getting from it. So I mean, I'm 100% in support of the applicant's request.
I just want to comment on what you said about keeping those, that rural, that open space. I think there's something lacking in our zoning. There are, if you could put that picture back up, since I live in the neighborhood, I can just tell you that there are several large parcels, 16, 21 acres there, and the owners have put single houses. One, I think, they have a vineyard on one. Another one, they do raise chickens and small animals to the extent that's allowed. Another one that I know about just simply has a very nice house, and he's built a network of roads. And with the owner's permission, I'm allowed to go over there and walk and enjoy that property. So when you talk about the openness that we have in certain, away from the dense core of the city, we have these open parcels. What I find is that owners are already doing just what you're describing with this R20, within the R120 designation. It's just they happen to own large pieces of property. And I think we've struck on, a larger project. I hear what you say about a potential taking. I guess when we do zoning to begin with, we go through an environmental process, and so it's just established, and so we kind of inherit the zoning that was done in the past. Be that what it may, but perhaps again, the city should look at other allowable uses since we have these large parcels within a 120. People haven't subdivided them, and they do enjoy that openness, that they're protecting the environment.
Yeah. So I am supportive of an approach that, as staff indicated earlier, where there is no other path, right?
Right.
So I certainly support the city looking at creating other paths. Mm-hmm. Okay, but at the same time, just as you described these owners managing their parcels the way they're managing them, you yourself said, have said, ownership changes, right? And so people that own them and managing them now with a nice vineyard and a single house, the next owner comes along and it won't necessarily be that way. So I think there's two things. I support the applicant's request. I also would strongly support the city looking at options for people to use their property to do things with like animals and stuff without requiring application for a rezone as we're doing this evening.
Right.
So I think both things should be evaluated.
Okay. Go ahead, Amy.
I'll say I kind of fell where you are, where reading the public comment, particularly the phrase donut hole, kind of stuck out to me and really struck me as being that I didn't want to be spot zoning and I didn't want to be approaching it like that. However, I do think that the location of this parcel in particular, and again, this goes to our conversations where I'm not making a blanket statement around zoning. I agree that it could be relooked at, but when we discuss this parcel, I think that the restrictions that they have with regards to road access and having it not be developed into a larger one, being on the edge of the city in a more rural zone, I think it's appropriate for this one, but I hold the same hesitations around making specific plans for one property. I don't want to give, is it more sellable because they have this zoning? Things like that came into consideration for me as being, is it consistent and fair and equitable across things? I did kind of land in, I think for this particular property, I felt that this decision, I don't know. I did have a hard time with this because I feel like it's really coming down to the horses and you know what I mean? And so I feel like the hooved animals are driving this decision to have to actually rezone versus, yes, we are concerned about the subdividing, but that's not an immediate threat. It's really the hooved animals. So, I mean, that was a really roundabout way to say it. I kind of struggled with this because I have a list of pros and cons on my sheet right here because I see a lot of sides to it, and I really did struggle with it. I called Center today to talk it through to make sure that I was understanding all of my concerns because my concern does come into future owners. Everyone speaks very highly of Ms. Martin and what she's doing is great, but I do think about this transferring and what that means long term. So all of that is to say, I kind of really had a hard time with this, and I see both sides of the coin, and so it's really interesting to see how our discussions play out.
Something else that just occurred to me when you were speaking about the donut hole, the spot zoning. Sometimes when a rezone comes before Planning Commission, there's more detail already presented. So you have, all we know now is that, actually, all I know now are llamas and miniature horses, and I'm guessing there's going to be a house somewhere. So, we don't really have the full picture of what the intent, the use of this property is going to be, other than the rezoning, then allowing to raise the animals. So, but we don't really know on the property, which use is going to be located where. And I think sometimes when a rezone is considered, you have more detail, and that's usually in a commercial application. So I think that not having much information about that also was a struggle for me to understand what the purpose is.
Well, I'll outline my thinking, and then folks can correct me where I might be running astray. I think the advantage for the public interest is that this rural area remains as rural as you can get it for the moment. There's heavy congestion, you've got narrow roads, they can't accommodate a lot of traffic. Someone who lives in the area said it started out with something like 14 houses and now is up to 40. And you go down those narrow roads, and I don't know about you folks, but no matter where I go in this county, I don't care what the sign says about 20 miles per hour, you have to double it. And there's a safety issue. So that's number one, that's very attractive. And you keep it able to accommodate the people who already live there and are coming to live there. So that's attractive. I do admit that I made some assumptions that there can be financial advantages down the road. You have animals on the property get certain tax advantages and may be able to hold on to it a lot longer and then subdivide at a future date. I don't know, and I don't care, because that's not before us. It just seemed that you have an added advantage of, apart from keeping the area rural, you have the idea of being able to control brush, which is a very serious problem. I know, and I appreciate the comments that the chair made about the other adjoining properties that were larger, and I don't know that there would be a problem about any one of them coming back and asking, in essence, the same thing. I'm not, maybe, I don't know. I just don't see it. But I didn't know, by looking at that map up on the wall on the TV screen, what all those properties would entail, how far R12 or R120 goes. But I don't see a problem for the presence. It's just like what Commissioner Friend said. It could be one horse as a noisy animal and smells and so on. Or it could be 40. You know, you address it when and if that happens. So that's my current thinking as to where I'm headed for the moment. If somebody corrects me or gives me something new, I'm certainly open to it.
Well, I have a copy of our zoning atlas. This is circa 2019, so I think it's fairly, it's current, but if you care to look at it, we could put it up on the board. Sure. Or,
wow, these are
have it on my wall at home. Do you know if that's going to work for us?
If I can remove it.
I don't think we can. I think it's only if there's a special code.
They are. You got it?
Do you know how to do it?
They're very strong magnets.
I don't want to embarrass you, Kurt.
Please embarrass me.
You got it?
How'd you do that?
It's a secret.
That's-
Personality. And that doesn't work at all. I see why they use the magnets. So just to answer your question, this is all the R120, and then this is the
R20 is the light green,
Yes.
and this other stuff over here, the darker color
This
is
is
not
R
included?
1 acre surrounding it.
Okay. So
And then this is-
it's the light green.
It's the light green.
Okay.
So we'll leave that for now, just to answer your question. And since I did, I'll bring my copy down. Okay.
I have a quick,
Sure.
yeah, and this is the first one of these that's come before us since I've been on the commission, so this is fascinating to me to, yeah, okay, excellent.
Me too, in 20-some-odd years,
Really?
actually.
That's, okay.
Single parcel, or?
Like this, upzoning like this way, to go reverse from, as opposed to, we want to split more.
Right, and that was going to be my
Yeah,
point,
yeah, going the other way. I mean, this is really unique.
Yeah, as the owner of a R120 lot, the ability for us to subdivide our lot is, for us personally, is a huge benefit. And so to Commissioner Friend's point, to have an owner of a parcel going the opposite direction, they are sacrificing the possibility of financial benefit by doing this. I land on the side of allowing property owners within their rights to use their property however they want, not to detriment to their neighbors. And so I land on the same spot as Commissioner Friend is on this one. Yeah, I would support the rezone. And to his point, the other owners of these R120, these larger lots, they may very well have bought those lots because they were subdividable. And so it would probably be a harm to some of them, I'm sure, to remove that possibility down the road. So anyway, it's an interesting discussion, but I think I do fall on the same side of this argument as Commissioner Friend. I look forward to seeing how this all works out.
The applicant has a dream, in my view. This applicant has a dream. I would like to raise these animals. I have this property. Because of a quirk or absence of other permissions, if I want to fulfill my dream, I need to go this path. And I don't see a compelling negative for the city to allow the individual the opportunity, and they have to go to council, so it's not just us. We're not the deciding body here. But I am absolutely in favor of allowing this individual to pursue their dream, and I think it offers preservation of rural aspects of Placerville and doesn't take anything away from surrounding property owners. The nuisance thing applies regardless. Regardless of the size of your property, nuisance is a nuisance, and so I think we should approve it. And I'm not prepared to make a motion, but I can get myself there if necessary.
Well, as you prepare yourself, I just, I looked through at the purposes for these designations. I think there were some other red flags there. On page 4 on table 2 under rural residential, point 1, they talk about rural area with limited services. And, this particular parcel has both EID service and city sewer service, as opposed to, I know by anecdote, I don't know which ones are actually affected. There are some further out, Maureen, that are on wells, no, probably not on wells, but they do have their own septic. So, if you look at the purposes for the zoning, and as you look through the list, this particular parcel just doesn't answer, those purposes that are listed. Anyways, if you look through, I just felt like it wasn't a good fit for the rezone, and really the only reason to rezone this is the desire to raise animals, and so this is very harsh, but if that's the dream to raise horses, then perhaps maybe no other parcels were available at all, but I think a buyer has a responsibility to look at what is allowed and keep in mind what it is they desire to do with their property, and respect zoning as it's established, and look for a parcel that suits the intended need. So from that aspect, it is, I'm having a hard time agreeing with the findings to rezone this one particular parcel. I just don't think that it's a good match for the listed purposes, although I really am sympathetic to the idea of a property owner, having full enjoyment of their property. As we discussed earlier, I think maybe one problem could be in the way our zoning is written. There aren't enough tolerances, there aren't enough allowances for these larger parcels within the R120 designation to have a few more uses that don't become a nuisance to the adjoining property owners.
Madam Chair, so you called out the table on page 4 of the staff report, is that correct?
Right, table 2.
And so the low-density residential is what it's currently zoned, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then they're requesting the rural residential, RR, right?
Yes.
So rural residential, RR, from table 4, number 1, provide for single-family residential development at very low densities in rural areas with limited services and facilities. Well, we've already heard about the relatively poor road infrastructure, right? And so limited services there.
Well, that's just one.
We're talking about one single-family residence on the parcel. Provide for agricultural uses compatible with the residential character of the area. I haven't heard an argument as to why horses and/or llamas would be incompatible there, so I don't see a challenge with number 2. Number 3, create conditions conducive to a desirable rural environment and protect it from encroachment by unrelated and incompatible uses. I think the upzoning would absolutely do that. Protect watershed lands and open space values, clearly. Prevent incompatible development on steep slopes. Not sure that's applicable in this particular case. Minimize the need for extension of urban-level utilities and facilities. Again, it checks that box. And preserve land suited for eventual development until such time as they are needed and the economical provision of utilities, streets, schools, recreation, et cetera, are provided. So I think the request actually checks off all these boxes.
Oh,
I don't see an inconsistency with this at all.
No, that's not the way I read that at all. Number 3 is included under low density residential, so that's already existing. Number 4, I'm actually very concerned about protecting watershed lands and open space values. Well, it will be more open space, but having animals, is not inherently protecting our watersheds. In fact, grazing can have a tremendous impact on water quality and watershed conditions. Prevent incompatible development on steep slopes. According to the staff report, this actually is for the area, and I can speak to that. I live not that far away. It's less than 20%. I have more than 20% slope on about a third of my property. So that's not really, it's not a steeply sloped parcel. Minimize the need for extension of urban level utilities and facilities. Well, the EID already serves that area, as does the city. So, in extending services, that's always tied with zoning and, the predicted possible development. So, the utilities and facilities have already been laid, and so it's a matter of connecting to something that already exists as opposed to creating a new sewer line or creating an extension of a water line. Preserve land suited for eventual development until such time as they're needed. That's another sticking point for me. Today we are trying to preserve this rural character, and I appreciate that. I certainly benefit from that. But, in 10 or 15 years, we don't know what the demand for housing, and it could be that, a developer would be willing to come in and improve the roads, go to all the expense of, that would be required to fully develop this parcel. And so that's why I hesitate to approve this as opposed to approving something in a broader scope where, the city looks at the impact of rezoning in this area in a longer term as opposed to this short-term request.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Can I just add one other thing that I don't think it's been given enough attention? Fire. I don't know about you, but my phone has been alerting me to fires in the area recently, and they'd be 1 acre, 2 acres, 4 acres. There was one yesterday. It's a very serious problem. My example is I live on what is left of the Kirk Ranch. It was about 20 acres. And the neighbor has goats and llamas to control the grass. Because my portion is in the city, and because it's zoned differently, I have to pay $2,000 to $6,000 a year to clean the brush, which I dutifully do to protect the public. These folks, their dream for taking care of horses is going to have that benefit for all of us in controlling a fire hazard. And that, to me, is very compelling. I just wanted to add that because I think that might be something Commissioner Friend might want to consider in his motion. That I would second.
Finding number 8. So I'm prepared to make a motion, Madam Chair. I move that we approve the request as presented in General Plan Amendment GPA 2401 and Zone Change ZC 24-07 APN, adopting the staff report as part of the public record and accepting the findings in support as listed in the staff report, beginning on, as soon as I can find it. On page 10 of the staff report, Roman numeral 2, 1 through 7, and also then adding number 8, that the proposed use and request will reduce the fire risk to the property and support the city's continuing efforts as a fire-safe community. And approve it, and the following recommendations as stated in the staff report on page 11.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Ms. Lepper, you were about to say something.
Yeah, just that I'm still tending to fall in line with the chair about this being a single residence within a larger zone that probably needs to be addressed on a larger scale, and that the hoofed animals are really the sticking point to me of why this whole rezone is being requested, and I'm having a hard time getting past that myself, and that was my primary obstacle and continues to be. So.
Thank you. All right.
And I appreciate that, and again, going back to the applicant and their dream, I don't want to penalize an owner of a property because we are deficient, not the commission, and not to say, that there is no mechanism, other alternative mechanism. I mean, the chair offered, a variance or a conditional use permit. It's just unfortunate there isn't another mechanism for this. But given that, I don't want to penalize the applicant for that. And I think that what they're planning to do is valuable. It brings a lot of positives. There are a few negatives, perhaps, one could argue, but there's a lot of positives with this. So I'm not uncomfortable doing this. So
Just to clarify for the record, that my concerns are around the property, not the owner. So
No, sure. No,
so she could
right,
walk out
right.
of here tomorrow and sell the property. And
No,
so I'm really coming at it at that point. Not.
Yeah.
I have great sympathy. I have dreams too, but at the same time, we do have to stick to what will be going forward and how we can defend it going forward should someone else. So if the rest, it's gone, but if the rest of the properties come to us for this, and again, I'm not opposed to it on principle, it's just that I'm saying when we talk about consistency and we talk about opening the gates and such, I'm kind of falling in line with the chair of this feels very specific, and I think it could have unintended consequences, and therefore that is where I'm falling, not because I don't want her to have her horses or her dream, or that I even think it's an appropriate rural property. I'm talking about the larger zone and the specificness to this property of why we're doing it.
I'd like to amend my motion. I'd like to add an additional finding. And the finding is that there does not exist any mechanism, whether it be variance or conditional use permit or other legal means, to allow the applicant to use their property the way they would desire to use it. I think that is actually an important finding for me, because to the chair's point earlier, if we could have done it through variance, or we could have done it through CUP, I absolutely would have done that. But that doesn't exist for them. So I think that is a significant finding to support this spot zoning, as a term has come up. So would the seconder of the motion accept that as a finding? Yes. Okay, thank you. So, because I think it's significant.
Could you just repeat your last
Oh,
one?
okay, so so finding number 9 would be that there does not exist any there's no mechanism available to the applicant, whether it be variance or conditional use permit or other similar mechanisms for them to use their property in the manner requested, or that would permit the use of hooved animals. I guess we'll say it that way. There's a term for horses, cattle, and such. There's a term for that. There's a term for that group of
I think
animals.
hooved animals was used.
Yeah, but we'll use that.
Staff report, so that's-
And staff can find a suitable term, grazing or whatever.
thinking of
Livestock.
livestock?
Thank you. Livestock. So there is no mechanism for the applicant to have livestock, enjoy livestock on their property. And so I think, for me, that's another really compelling reason. So does that work? Commissioner Lepper, does that work for you? Is that clear? That's clear?
I do appreciate you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It gets a little, my brain
Yeah,
gets a little
it's
clogged
the live
sometimes,
stu- yeah,
so thank you for
great.
clarifying it.
Yeah.
So we have a motion, two amendments, and Mr. Smith, you're okay with all the amendments? So we have a second for the motion as amended. Any further discussion? Okay, please call the vote.
Vice Chair Carter,
Aye.
Commissioner Friend,
Aye.
Chair Keeney,
No?
Commissioner Lepper,
No?
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Okay, that is 3-2, is approved. There is, actually, so what we do next is, this goes up to city council. And so our vote of 3-2, this will be then sent on for the city council as a recommendation. Listed on page 11 of the staff report. And so this isn't appealable. This is our recommendation,
It's not appealable. It goes to the city council. It's a legislative
as
act.
opposed to a site plan review or any other matters that come before us. It
If
goes
the
to
planning
city
commission was the
council.
final decision
And do you
with a
know-
10-day appeal, then there would be an appeal.
That would be
but
where
there's no
any-
appeal. Both general plan amendments and rezones are termed a legislative act and can only have final approval by the city council.
And do you know the date that this would go to city council?
No, but we're going to get it there as quickly as possible.
Okay, you'll
but I
expedite
can't give a
it.
definitive
Okay.
date.
Very good.
Can I make one final comment, is that the meeting date on here says 2023 on the staff report. Just, it's okay, you do so much work, don't worry about it, I just want it for the record, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate hearing from everyone in the audience on this matter. Good luck with raising the horses. All right. So now I've lost my agenda again.
We have an educational presentation on
What we
something.
decided to do is after that, right, so we've moved that, thank
Shipping
you.
containers.
So is staff prepared to move forward with item 9, presentations?
Are we taking a break or no? Are we having a short recess or no?
That's up to you, either way.
Pierre just ran off, we can keep going.
Pierre did, I'm giving the presentation, so.
You'll be giving the presentation?
Yeah, it's up to you if you need a break.
Well, let's move ahead then. So I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Hunter, for the presentation.
All right, reorienting. All right, so staff is requesting direction from the Planning Commission for the development of regulations for the use of sea lane containers within the city. These are cargo containers, shipping containers, lots of names. So currently, sea lane containers are allowed on a temporary basis when associated with an active construction project and under a temporary use permit, or temporarily for the transportation of items, say if you were moving and you'd hired PODS, the Portable On-Demand Storage Moving Company. The Planning Commission has also reviewed projects within the last few years under site plan reviews that include placement of sea lane containers in commercial zones, which include Burning Barrel and more. In the case, Burning Barrel was an approved sea lane container kitchen, while more was for site storage. Sea lane containers do require a building permit, and if located within a flood zone, are required to comply with flood zone requirements. The interest in placement of sea lane containers has increased, including staff time associated with code violations associated with the unpermitted placement of sea lane containers. Because of this, staff is seeking Planning Commission guidance and direction for the development of specific regulations for sea lane containers within the city. So there are several considerations for sea lane container regulations. These include what zones should sea lane containers be permitted in? Do we treat residential requests for sea lane containers the same as requests in commercial and industrial zones? What about in historic districts or along the scenic Highway 50 corridor? Where we determine sea lane containers to be allowed, do we have a limit on the number of containers? This could be based on parcel size or zone. Do we have a limitation on the size of permitted containers? Do we allow stacking of sea lane containers? And if so, do we have a limit on the number stacked or a height restriction? Should there be regulations for the colors or the colors of the containers? or screening. Should containers be painted to blend with the surrounding area, or be painted in earth tones, or painted to match the primary building or dwelling on the parcel? Do we require screening, such as fencing or landscaping, or the placement of the container in a manner that prevents the container from being visible from the right-of-way to the greatest extent possible? Then the overarching question, and something the Commission should keep in mind, is when do we allow a sealand container to be used in lieu of a conventionally built storage building that matches the main structure? The city's development guide provides clear guidelines for planning and development projects and serves as the standards for the development community, staff, and the Planning Commission to more easily ensure compliance with the policies and programs adopted in the general plan. Sealand containers are, by nature, contrary to the city's development guide and the general plan community design element. And the city's development guide does not provide guidance for sealand containers beyond the requirement for shielding. So in preparation for this presentation and discussion, staff completed a preliminary review of other jurisdictions for regulations of sealand containers. Some jurisdictions are more relevant and comparable to Placerville, like Auburn, Davis, Jackson, Grass Valley, and Nevada City. As part of this review, staff looked at what zones allow the placement of sealand containers, if there is a restriction on the number of containers allowed, if the container is required to comply with the underlying zone setbacks or specified accessory structure setbacks, if there were size restrictions, including square footage and height limitations, if screening of the containers was required, and if stacking of containers is allowed, and if so, the maximum height or number, and if there are any other applicable standards such as paint color, parcel cover restrictions, or regulations regarding utility connections. The table on this slide provides a brief overview of staff's review of other jurisdictions. Starting from left to right, the X's identify what jurisdictions have regulations pertaining to the placement of permanent containers within residential zones, and then other zones, including commercial and industrial. Then, if there are specific standards for setbacks, the number of containers allowed, if there's a size restriction, if screening or specific paint colors are required, and if stacking is allowed. Results from the review showed that only 4 of 14 jurisdictions allowed the placement of permanent sealand containers within residential zones, and 11 specifically identify a permitting process for permanent placement of sealand containers within commercial, industrial, or agricultural zones. Where size is restricted, some jurisdictions identify a total aggregate square footage maximum of all accessory structures, including sealand containers. Others included length and height maximums. A handful of jurisdictions identify limitations on the total number of containers that can be permitted per parcel. In some cases, it's a restriction based on the total area of the parcel, providing a range in which one container is allowed and a range where more than one is allowed. There were also 2 jurisdictions that set specific sizes that the containers could not exceed. Regarding screening and color requirements, some jurisdictions identify a pre-approved color palette for containers, while others require that the structure be painted in a manner to blend into the background or match the primary structure on the parcel. Some require installation of fencing or screening, while others require the placement of the container behind the primary building, residence, and/or commercial, to the greatest extent possible. Overall, most jurisdictions require maintenance of the containers so that there is never graffiti, lettering, or logos. So staff prepared some recommendations for the Commission to prohibit the permanent placement of sealand containers within residential zones, including single-family and multifamily zones. The city shall still allow temporary placement under a TUP or associated with an active building permit and for moving companies. However, parcels zoned to state residential or single-family acre residential with larger minimum parcel sizes may be a consideration for allowance. To allow sealand containers within commercial and industrial zones, and when added to the zoning ordinance, the agricultural commercial zone. This does not include highway commercial, central business district, or convenience commercial zones. For permitted zones, staff highly recommends a screening requirement and compliance with all required setbacks. No stacking of sealand containers, except for within industrial zones where the stacking should be limited to no more than 2 containers. Placement within allowable zones should require approval of a design review, and placement shall not take up required parking nor infringe upon the path of travel. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you very much. You did an incredible amount of research looking at all the different jurisdictions that actually have commented on the use, and I realized that some of them did not even, have any regulations, including nothing for screening or painting. So anyway, good job. Thank you very much. So what's our next steps? Just to discuss this, take public comment and discuss this, and then what is our preferred next step after the, let me look here. It's just our presentation.
So, Chair, you can certainly take any public comment if there's members here that wish to speak to this item. This is just the very beginning. Staff has been having a lot of issues as of late with sealand containers. They've become very popular. They pop up in the middle of, well, not in the middle, but they pop up in parking lots, take up parking spaces. We argue with the owners requiring the need for a building permit, which is minimum required. They can be very unsightly. They have a very industrial look, and that's why during the presentation we give a difference or preference for industrial or heavy commercial zone districts where you might see this kind of a use. But in residential, especially when we want to look at our historic districts, well, certainly a sealand container would run afoul of our standards that we would like to see in a residential zone.
I happen to
that's
have
historic.
one in my neighborhood. Just there was no setback at all from the roadway, and it was a very long-term remodel that they were doing. And I understand they needed storage, but it very unsightly. So. Chris,
So, yeah,
would you
but the
mind putting
main-
up
the
that
main-
last slide that has your recommendations so we could kind of keep that in mind as we hear from the public? Please
So
go ahead, Pierre.
again, we're hoping to get some general direction. Does the commission have concerns? What are those concerns? Do they align with where staff maybe is looking at providing with further regulation of sealand containers? Because eventually the end state would be come with a regulation that we would apply to sealand containers.
Okay.
Where they should go, what zones, and then what parameters should they be allowed.
Question, how would a sea line, I know what a sea line container is, but how would a sea line container be different than, say, a very large tough shed? To use, and I hate to use a particular brand name, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say a tough shed, right? So these are more decorative, attractive, but they're still at the, Heavier, but at the same time, they're accomplishing the same function, right? They're storage. And by the way, when we say, we talk about these sea line containers, they're not being converted into housing, right? They're not like, we're adding a bathroom and a kitchen and cutting a window in it. Because, I could see an ADU as a sea line container, so, right, so I think we absolutely have to do this, but I think there are some questions we've got to kind of noodle through on this. And going back to a business just, plopping one of these things down and taking up parking spaces, parking regulations aside from whatever was approved, what if they put up a tough shed instead of the cargo container, right? You see where I'm going with this? I think we have to kind of...
Just clarifying, a tough shed, that's typically got like some sort of architectural element.
It's certainly a little bit more attractive.
It's got like a roof and a door.
Yeah, it can.
Okay.
You can put a cupola on top of your little seat.
Chair, my recommendation would be not to get into the minutia, because then
Yeah.
we'll be here all night.
Okay, all right, but
I'd be here all week.
Let me just ask real quick, go back to my
Regarding
question.
a tough shed, typically tough sheds, at least the majority of them are under 120 square feet, so they don't require a building permit, and they're just subject to setbacks, where sealand containers do require a building permit, and so it triggers all the other discretionary reviews. For example, they're in a commercial zone. That's a site plan review for a...
That exists now.
container.
Those requirements
That
exist now?
now.
Okay.
Typically, staff would just deny them based on our design guidelines that are adopted and the community design element of our general plan. It conflicts. And so we're trying to look at some, do do you see sealant containers as an issue like staff does, or is there some direction you'd like to give us where we should go with permitting them or not permitting them or screening them, all that we went through in our presentation?
I guess I wanted to ask a question here, and please excuse me if I overlooked something, but I went through this, and under the agenda 9.1, I don't see any supporting material like what was presented on the screen. Did I miss something?
This was not provided to the commission. This is just a staff's presentation. We can certainly provide it after.
Good, because I assume that you're going to come back and do this again with specifics that we have it in advance. For example, there's been some reference to the idea that when you have one of these containers, you have to have certain kind of permits. I would feel more comfortable being informed as to what those permits are, what are the regulations that now exist. And then regarding Commissioner Friend's comments about using it for housing, I actually, on my feed from somewhere, Microsoft, Facebook, I don't know what it is, but I get these ads for various prefab ADU units and containers. And there's some company in Sacramento that will manufacture them for your need. They'll cut out the sides and put in side windows, and they'll allow you to stack them in from very attractive places. So those are the kind of things I'd want to look at. And I would feel much more comfortable if I knew what were the specific problems we've got right now.
Okay,
What are the places that are causing eyesores? Give us some examples. What kind of standards do you want for setbacks?
Let's bring that back to the whole commission. Right now, I'd like to hear from the public. I'd like to, so that we can all
please. But
talk
that's
about
just
these
some of my
issues. I think we
concerns.
all
Thank
have some concerns about that. So right now, I'd like to ask members of the public to come up to the podium and share your thoughts with us. You've seen this presentation.
Thank you for,
yeah.
thank you for all your hard work on the presentation and going through those details. Ruth Carter, City of Placerville, and I just want to say that I am in support of adopting similar practices to what the county has right now. But to add to that, as the council or as the commission was talking about, you know, as ADUs are now by right and extremely expensive, some of the more affordable options that are popping up are container houses. This also helps us fit our RENA requirements because right now we have our housing requirement met with the two projects that are in town, you know, between Mallard Lane and Cottonwood. And, but, you know, there are in the RENA reports risk of somebody paying off their loans and then us being in a deficit again with housing. With ADUs being affordable with container style housing, I think that we will actually be in a benefit to the city by being able to mitigate some of those costs for homeowners, and especially, you know, as our aging population gets older. I know I have my parents, you know, living with us, and what a great way to be able to have additional housing for family members in need and or affordable housing for workforce. So I would just suggest that the commission take those thoughts into consideration and maybe adopt what the county has currently and maybe add to that for a provision for ADUs. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair Keeney, if I can just add some clarification. Housing is outside of the scope of this whole discussion for regulating sealant containers. In other words, if somebody were to retrofit a sealant container and meet all the building code requirements for a house, we treat it like a manufactured home. So we're not going there. We're not talking about housing at
Okay,
all.
so
We're
that's
talking about sealant containers strictly as
Completely
a
unimproved.
storage facility in lieu of a stick-built barn or a shed or a garage kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you. That does help a
Great
lot.
clarification, thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, Sean Briggs, Placerville. Actually, what I was going to comment on sort of ties into that, which is that there's the whole issue as far as the sea crates or any other sort of cost-friendly construction project. While I wouldn't want to see a bunch of sea crates as is laying around, if you're just for a cost savings purpose, using it as part of your construction, modifying it sort of like what was being talked about as far as the housing, except instead for storage uses, I don't really see a problem with that. So I don't know whether you guys want to go and look at possibly, instead of just outright saying yes or no on them, setting criteria for how it's used. Like if somebody puts one on and it's on, they get a permit, it's on a stable platform or foundation, it's got surface walls applied outside that, don't cost as much as doing the full stick build, but still make it aesthetically acceptable. Is that something that you guys would want to permit, basically?
Thank you.
Good evening. Hey, did I miss open public comment? Did it get moved around, or? I remember hearing.
You mean non-agenda items?
Yeah, I heard the
Yeah,
written,
we
I heard the written comment, but I don't recall
did
the
call
open
for,
public comment.
written communications, non-agenda items, number 8.
Maybe we
We
didn't
didn't
do
do
public
seven.
7.
I don't think we did 7.
I had just a real short sentence on that.
Items of interest to the public, non-agenda items. Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I put the two together, written communications. Yes, please, go ahead, under.
With that, or
under number
back?
7. So, what topic?
The sea containers, fantastic staff.
I'm sorry, but
The sea
you want to talk
containers?
about the sea land containers?
Yeah. Fantastic presentation. And just some things to throw into the mix to be thinking about. Here we go. Yes to applying architectural standards to them. Basically, you wouldn't just make it so you don't even know it's a sea container. The price savings, I understand. You might consider having to put a slab under it because otherwise you're going to have skunks and other critters hiding out under there. I've personally seen some fantastic shops. 2 40-foot containers, a combined roof, tractors in the middle, just beautiful. I don't know, you might have to restrict that to certain lot sizes, of course, but.
And this is permanent storage, is that the application?
Yeah, this is
used?
way out South County.
Okay.
So, but it is a fantastic potential for some cost savings, and if you do the architectural treatments to it, you wouldn't even know. And I was trying to think about stacking. So we have ridge height requirements or restrictions. So, I mean, if you could double and then stack and put a gable roof over it, could you still meet ridge requirements and put siding around it? And then you could punch openings through in between them. Are you going to allow burying them with reinforcement? Or some of the other things? And definitely in more sensitive areas like our historic districts, size, but the architectural requirements, and definitely a roof. Because one, with the flat roof, we got snow loads and all the fire debris that no one's going to get up there and clean. And you're going to have 6 inches of pine needles, a total blaze waiting to happen. So I would say gable roofs over them. I think one of our restaurants wanted to do one as a kitchen, like even a permanent kitchen.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure if it sounded like even the temporary pods aren't allowed.
Yeah, I think that this should also maybe address those
So yes to
pods as
using
well.
them for, moving. Yes to using them for building and remodeling, because that could take 18 months, 2 years, and you need a place to secure your materials and your tools with the high theft of nowadays. Yes to, meeting all the requirements of setbacks and everything like that. And of course, Rio Vista allows stacking them. But, you know, potentially with a slab and in the flood zones, I think you're going to have to require a slab with tie downs and anchors. And, you know, discuss utilities, yes or no, especially if it's a shop or a garage. And yes to, if you don't allow the side by side with the space with the roof, I mean, could somebody do a horseshoe? And yeah, just meeting the architectural standards, I think, would go a very long way. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing your experience and your comments.
If staff could, we do allow pods, and we're not proposing to change that. You know, temporary placement with a building permit, or if you're moving, we're not planning on, or that's not proposed.
And is the pods, the installation, are there any permits required, any bookends
If
on
it's
how
going to
long?
be in the street, then an encroachment permit.
They can be in the street and
With an encroachment permit.
with an encroachment permit. Okay, so that review is already in place.
Yes.
Thank you.
I guess I wanted to follow up by suggesting that I agree with Mr. Drobish that it's a fantastic report, it's very effective. But I would ask this, when we get something like this, one item, one single sentence on a Thursday, it doesn't give us a chance to be fully informed. So one suggestion is, you had a lot of work that you clearly had done. For example, you had some regulations and some ordinances for different counties. It'd be helpful if that was in a binder we could come in and go through point by point and be informed when we come here. Because if this comes up for a vote, I'm not going to be inclined to vote on something when I don't feel comfortable about having.
I don't think we're being asked to vote on anything at this time. We're just sharing
And
our
I
thoughts
wanted
with
to make it
staff
clear
to develop
about the
something
future.
that perhaps we do
And
vote
I
on in the
understood
future.
that. I was very clear on that.
Okay.
I was very clear on that. But when it comes again, I want to make sure that it's clear that I would need something more substantive, and I'm willing to come in advance and look through a binder, so you don't have to make multiple copies of something. That's the suggestion.
Yeah, staff is just looking for general direction to help with
Right.
developing a regulation, and that the regulation would come before you, and you would get that in advance, and you could look at it.
It seems to me that the broad considerations are parcel zoning, usage, and by usage I mean short-term versus long-term, and that should be defined with different, I mean, I could see almost no requirements for short-term use, encroachment permit acknowledged, for example, in the street. But if it's gonna be a longer than a certain period of time, then you're gonna have to require a slab and some of the other suggestions. So I think kind of approaching it from that perspective, and then considering, are there any areas where we would absolutely prohibit these, right? Street visibility, okay, again, if it's not visible from the street, then, you know, probably a lot less requirement for, restriction than if it is visible from the street. So it seemed to me kind of those things. And in commercial versus residential, right? Going back to some of the issues I think staff identified, them being plopped down in parking lots, right, and taking up space, et cetera, et cetera. So but it seems to me just starting from some really broad things, and then you can distill it down to more specifics.
I think you made a really good point about timing, because I think that will be important to put in, say, under 6 months, over 6 months, just as an example, time, because I think that really will impact the amount of work. I immediately thought of the Moore building that we approved the container on. I think it looks great. It probably works very well for them. It's a nice amount of space. It does not detract from the building. The painting looks wonderful. So to me, that's kind of a really great example of a Sealand container working currently in our town that we have approved. I'm not in favor of screening. I think that's really aggressive and could just result in some really varied outcomes. I am in favor of the color palette, or at least not having it look like it just rolled off the ship. So that's my initial concern, or not concern, but feedback. The setbacks, obviously, and the weight concern is there for me too. Just it is heavier than a tough shed, for example, things like that. So I think putting a slab in consideration when it comes into a longer term placement would be a really good idea to do. And I think that it's really good that we're doing this. The burying is actually a really good point, because that is something to be considered, because I think they are being used for that purpose fairly regularly because of their structure. So I think we need to consider that. But I do think this is a great option for people in town. I know that they're available, they're affordable, we're reusing them. So I support us implementing rules around it, but I also do support allowing them to be used within town, within reason. Pretty much my feedback, I think, up to there. The only other thing I was going to say of the stacking, and within industrial zones, it should be fine, but they have like full-on container parks of like shops, and, you know, in Vegas, they have one downtown. So they're being used in really interesting ways. So the stacking, I'm kind of like, I don't know yet, because I don't know the future of them. This could be something that, wow, this is cool if you can stack 3, and so I'd be sort of like hesitant to go there too quickly, but that's just my initial feedback on what I saw.
I agree. I was going to address the stacking also. I think stacking should only be probably be in industrial. But I guess there is, you know, I have seen some really interesting ones down in San Francisco near the ballpark where they have restaurants and bars that are essentially stacked. Even in downtown Sacramento, they use, for beer gardens and such, they use really attractive container design. So my initial would be stacking only in commercial, but I would be interested in seeing some ideas from other areas about the commercial district. But I wouldn't think we'd want anything stacked in a residential. Just my feedback. I like the idea of having some kind of, especially in commercial and in residential, if we decide there is any kind of residential use, the idea of having some kind of a roof structure, I think would add some architectural interest and some safety. So that might be something the city would consider, is some kind of roofing requirement. And also, I agree with you on the matching existing structures. I think in pretty much any, I guess industrial would be fine, but in commercial and in residential, matching existing buildings would be a really important factor in making them attractive. I'm glad to hear about the ADU applications, because like Commissioner Smith, I have been getting some ads for some really cool and really affordable container ADUs, and so I'm glad that that's still an option as long as they meet building codes. Because that was going to be my question: are there existing building codes that apply? But and also the idea of requiring a slab for permanent placement, I think, is absolutely a great idea. And yeah, having different qualifications for time, whether it's up to 6 months or 6 to 24, because as the public comment, there are remodels that regularly take 12 to 18 months. They are an amazingly secure and cheap way to store expensive tools, so that should be allowed. Temporary uses, as the city currently allows, is a great idea. So that's my input.
I could see a cottage industry manufacturing little roofs for the, you get your shed and boom, then they make you a little roof that you just put on there.
You're retired, go for it.
The prohibition in residential zones, the visibility from the street we talked about, so I'm not sure what kind of projects in our historic districts would require this amount of storage to get the project done. If they're doing a very extensive remodel, I guess I could see that a sea land container might be needed. But having looked at one of these as I made the turn on my own street, I think I looked at that sea land container for 2 years, and there was no setback, no screening, and it was very frustrating. It was blight because behind it they were building a really nice house, and so you could tell that they're trying to do a lot with their property, but my goodness, it really was an impact for the rest of us.
If could, we're looking more for permanent placement. We already have regulations for or process for temporary.
So prohibited
We're really looking
permanent
at, do
placement.
you want to permanently allow placement of a sea land container in a residential zone or in a historic district or in the commercial zone? That's what we're looking at. And how would you regulate that?
Okay, I want to get more information on how this was allowed to stay in place for so long, because if it's a temporary.
If
that's
it
one
had an
thing.
active building permit, sometimes projects do take a while, and we do allow them to remain during the course of an active building permit.
Without any screening, without any, okay.
Correct.
That's why this one was allowed to stay in place, okay. You were about to say something, I think.
I was, and I wisely decided not to, but I will unwisely do it anyway.
This should be interesting.
No, I want to confess that I actually considered buying a railroad car. And the cost of having it delivered here was about $8,000. I thought that would be a very attractive way to have an alternative housing unit. But believe me, I abandoned it when I figured out what an incredible nightmare it would go through for zoning, building codes, and all the rest. But it'd be very attractive. And there are some designs, and I'm glad that Commissioner Carter pointed out the commercial uses in Sacramento, because it does remind me there are a number of restaurants that have done it, and it's very attractive. So it can be a very creative thing, so it's hard to kind of come up with rules in advance that's going to govern that. But I'll just tell you, I've given up the caboose, the railroad car. Okay.
There's a book about this, the Boxcar Children, right?
Yeah.
You were trying to recreate.
So the first bullet point, prohibited in residential zones, I would change that to restrictions for use in residential zones, because there's a wide variety of parcels and things, so an outright prohibition I'd be uncomfortable with. I think the parameters of how they can be used, you have to either meet these conditions or you can't have this kind of an environmental setting, whatever, how you want to phrase it, as opposed to a 100% outright prohibition. But taking okay, well, how can something like this be allowed without detracting from the neighborhood? We have a lot of design principles and guidance, et cetera.
Are you thinking of having it come before the commission as a discretionary, or do you think?
I would like to think that the city has guidelines for utilization of sealand containers, and here's where they're allowed, here's where they're not, here's what you can do, can't. I think just kind of getting to that is what I would like to see. That'd be my preference, right?
For both residential and commercial?
It's easy. I think the commercial, in my view, commercial is easier to deal with. We have a lot more power and control, I think, automatically. So I would probably approach those philosophically differently anyway. But we have to address their use regardless of the environment, residential, industrial, and I'll separate industrial from commercial, even though they're kind of the same. Industrial is a very different type of commercial to me. So, residential, industrial, commercial. Each one of those broad areas, there might be something else. Might even say rural. Each of those, I think, have their own considerations that we would want to take into consideration.
Yeah, I think from staff's perspective, we currently require a site plan review, and so in commercial zones.
Yeah, okay, well,
So
there you
I just wanted to clarify if you were looking or seeking to maybe change that to be more ministerial.
I think I can't imagine a use in a historic zone, getting back to for permanent use, that it would be able to meet our design, our guidelines. So I would be in favor of an outright prohibition in historic districts for permanent placement.
And but not necessarily for all residential.
Not necessarily for all residential. I agree with Commissioner Friend that we have such varied, like our applicant today, with 7 acres, 7.5 acres. I'm sure that, under certain circumstances, that would be an acceptable use. So
With appropriate design
with
review.
appropriate design review, yeah.
And setbacks.
I agree with Commissioner Carter, other than I'm not sure we need to have a rule in that regard. You just simply can't have it in an historic district. There's no way it's going to pass, no matter how you interpret the regulations. the Interior Secretary's guidelines. It's just not going to fit. But on the residential, we've got two different issues, I would suspect, in broad terms. One is permanent structure of some kind, and the other one is temporary. So you're renovating a house, and you want to have the housing contents stored, or you're moving long distance, and there are those pod companies that I looked at years ago. Do you have to get a permit to have something there for 30 days, a
Is that
few
right,
months?
Ms. Hunter? You
Those
do
are the
have to
kind
get a
of
permit?
questions I
No,
think
I
that make a
mean,
difference.
for pods, it's generally not more than a few weeks when people are loading up their
Except for the
belongings.
encroachment permit.
You know, if it's within private property, not within the city right-of-way, you can place it. If it's within the city right-of-way or a public street, you'll need an encroachment permit.
Echo that I do think they should be allowed with review in residential zones, because I know, like, my property couldn't handle one, but my neighbor sure could, and it would be not a nuisance to me at all if you put one on there, nor would I even be able to see it if it was in the backyard. So I don't think that prohibiting them in residential zones would really serve us. I think that they should come before us to make sure that it's a large structure to place. So I do think there should be oversight on it, because once it's placed, hard to move too. You got to, it's not like we can just go push that tough shit, like, you know what I mean? So there is a higher level of engagement with the product itself. So I think that there should be review, but I don't think that it should be prohibited. Agree. Do we hit everything? Did we miss anything?
Okay, well, we look forward to your next
Helpful for, is that what you?
iteration.
Yes, I think that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, and, this is new information to us, so we've all got questions about pods and temporary versus permits and not being familiar with all of that. Thank you for
That's okay.
walking us through
It
it.
wasn't very clear that we're really looking at permanent rather than temporary. That was, yeah.
All right, and when that comes before us, then we can also take more public comment on that and move forward. All right.
Did you want to do open public comment or Mr. Drobish? Just like random.
Jump back to right. Mr. Drobish, did you have an item under number 7, public comment on non-agenda items?
Just real short, for years, my heart breaks for the railroad bridge down past Kentucky Fried Chicken that is just an abandoned, glorious piece of history, and it really got lost when the connector went through. But I don't even know who owns that property, the city, Caltrans, the railroad, who? Because I've always wanted to at least get in there and take out the trees that are destroying the structure. They get in the cracks, they grow, it just, we need to put volunteers together and try and save the bridge. It's like 1906 or something, and that was my only comment, was who owns it? Can we put volunteers on it to try and clean it up?
I can tell you who
Thank you.
built it.
Oh.
It was my great-grandfather, Thomas Christian Smith, in 1906 or 3, whatever it was. And my father, in his wisdom, gave the receipt, that, handwritten receipt for the money to build the project, but that was done by Smith, who was a blacksmith. He was the foreman of the slate quarry and also the Dalmatian mine. But my father gave it away to Dunlap, who was the head of the ID at the time. I don't know why. But once you go beyond that bridge, overpass, it is city property, and they do use it right now. I've seen them do excavation. But he's right. There's a certain period of time where they can do cleaning down the creek, and they need to do it, because once we have heavy water, it's really bad right now. Yeah. And you're going to have another flooding even worse than what we had before, no matter how bad the rain is, just because all those trees have been growing up.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that insight. All right. Since we've gone back to number 7, do any other members of the public have a comment on non-agenda items? Okay. Appreciate your patience, and I apologize if we did not give you sufficient time earlier in the meeting to speak to us on number 7. Number 11, we have no continued items tonight, and number 12, no new business. So that brings us to 13, matters from commissioners and staff. So we'll start with staff reports, staff to update us on the status of upcoming meetings and recent actions taken by the city council and so on. I'll turn it over to you two.
Pretty brief. We have a planning commission meeting on the 1st of October.
I know of one item that's on it.
Yeah, Chair Keeney, just a couple things just to report on. The Mallard, it's a 72-unit Mallard affordable housing project. The building permits have been issued, so we hope to see construction of the actual foundation and the building itself hopefully shortly. Middletown is still trudging along, a lot of engineering concerns. There are PG&E power poles that need to be moved. They're currently working on the retaining wall along Cold Spring, so that's a lot of the grading work that you'll see there for a while. Building permit has not been issued yet, but we're hopeful that we'll be issuing a building permit in the near future. Staff was reviewing a proposed 50-unit market rate apartment complex at the southwest corner of Texerna and Broadway. And we went through a preliminary plan review. Staff was pretty excited about that because I think it'd be the only market rate, a more higher level apartment complex for people. And they're selling the property now. They're marketing it. So we were sad to see that they're not moving forward. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what other. Yeah, we did get, there's a company called Boulevard Construction, and so they've been recently communicating with staff on submittal of their general plan amendment, rezone, a PD amendment as well to build and a variance application for height of a Fairfield brand of a Marriott hotel. And that would be on that piece of property located just behind the In-N-Out Burger up there. So we're happy about that. You're probably aware of the temporary use of the Office Max as a Halloween retailer, at least for the next, few months until we're past Halloween. So hopefully we'll get some
They
sales.
lost their site for the new car wash, so they found a new place to rent. Okay.
Yeah. So we're happy about that. Anything else? Oh, yes. We have been meeting again with the property owner of that property above the Mallard apartment project. D.R. Horton is interested in a 68-plus single-family residential development on that project. It was originally proposed for 84 townhomes, but with the market the way it is, I think that'll be a better product. Their target is more middle income, so the homes will be smaller. The lots will be a little bit smaller, but the homes are probably looking at 1,400 square feet to maybe 1,600 square foot. So smaller homes for more, hopefully cater to the entry-level first-time home buyers. So we're happy about that instead of the McMansions that we typically see being built. Anything else you can think of? I think that's about it in terms of projects going on. We're still very pleased to see what's going on at the Apple Farm Place. So we've been still working with permitting for the Beach Hut Deli. We hope to have them come in, since the Planning Commission approved their revisions to the site plan review as far as color and some of the architectural elements on the elevation. So we're hoping to see landscaping installed in there. I think is really going to make that parking lot look a lot better than it has for so many years. And I think that's about it, unless... Yeah, we have the Estonia. That's that 39 single-family residential that was, I guess that was originally submitted to the city, I think in 1999 or something like that. It's a very old subdivision, and it finally expired, and we were sad about that. But there is a developer that's been calling now and then on that, but I don't know if they have the horsepower to make it a go. Yeah, that's not really a big project. It's just parking. Yeah, I guess that's about it.
Has there been any word from the Mackinac Hotel developer?
No, the only thing that's gone on there is unfortunately staff had to take a little bit of code enforcement. It was becoming a fire hazard. There was a lot of graffiti. Graffiti's been removed, but there was a lot of homeless activity on the site, and it was just full of a lot of garbage and refuse. So we're trying to get that site cleaned up.
Okay.
Very unsightly.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I saw that there's a new business going on where the beer garden was.
A bar.
They put out a lot of furniture and umbrellas. Can you tell us anything about
Yes,
their plans?
a little. Staff has met with the new business owners a couple of times. They're a taqueria bar, and they just applied for their alcohol license. We're not sure when they're going to be opening. They had discussed with staff, possibility of a permanent barbecue outside, and so that's why we had been in communication. So no further.
I noticed that no one ever did anything about the retaining wall at the south end of the parking lot. That's going to have to be addressed at some point soon.
I think the feral cats love the new furniture. That was probably not well thought out. They have to reconsider that.
It's unfortunate. They were all ready to go earlier in the summer, and they stepped back. All right. Any other comments?
I just have one.
Yes.
Is there any update on the temporary construction fencing on the old Round Table building? Any changes in that?
No changes. There is a unpermitted banner. It's an offsite advertising banner, so we're going to notify the property owner.
Great. I'm glad you said something.
So many days to remove it,
That
or be
banner.
fined.
Okay.
It's unfortunate they had to close. It's really.
Anything else? I'm good. Okay. The last thing is 13.2.1, the special committee report in your packet. I provided a summary memo, and it's late, so I don't know how the rest of you feel about whether you want to take that up tonight or postpone that. How does the rest of the commission feel?
I'd like to thank the chair for the memo, and I have a few comments. The hour is late, and so I wouldn't want to do it disservice. I don't have a lot of huge. There's a few things, and what I may do is just submit them to staff to share. That way, for in advance of our next.
I think
meeting.
that's really the route we should use. Put everything through staff.
Yeah.
Then they can maybe do.
They can send it to
give you the Word
everybody, right?
document, and so then we can have a red line, that kind of thing, and then put it in the next packet.
And my
The
stuff is
public can
minor.
comment.
Yeah, my stuff is minor. I mean, it's not major, but minor. So I would be in favor of holding this off until our 10-1 meeting.
Same, and I just want to echo, thank you for taking the time to do it. You did a nice job.
Oh, thank you. I
Also
appreciate that.
Also echo the sentiments. It's a great document. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I look forward to hearing your comments about it, and hopefully we can, at the next meeting, perhaps, take some action and to move it along even further.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so that was it, special committee report, and it is, according to the iPhone 907, we stand adjourned until October 1st. Thank you all.